Hey guys. This is part 9 of What If Naruto Was an Introvert. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 41. The Darkness Rooted in the Leaves. The Godame Hokage was a blonde, busted and honey amber-eyed woman who was supposed to be in her 50s or beyond and instead did not look a day past 20. The fact she wanted to separate her from Naruto for a few training exercises, to test the waters of their psychological health, already made her an evil hag in Sakura's mind. It wasn't the fact that she'd missed Naruto so much to break down. No, she could survive that. She was more worried about Naruto's reaction, which was lacking. Sakura, Tsunade's eyes then firmly settled on her, making her wince and stand to attention. I know you have been just recently discharged. And I know this may not seem the most apt moment to speak, but you are a kunoichi of Konoha, so I expect you to remember the shinobi code. Sakura swallowed and nodded grimly. Shinobi were tools of the village that killed their hearts when the need arose. Good, the Godame nodded, visibly satisfied. There is a bit of a personal news I have to give you next, Sakura. Do you wish for Naruto to remain in the room? This time, the voice was soft. She didn't like it one bit. Her eyes moved to where Naruto was standing perplexed, before a grim visage settled on his face. She didn't know what the problem was. What was it? I suppose he can stay, Sakura whispered. It's nothing horrible, right? She tried to say with a small smile. Haruno Kazashi and Haruno Mabuki have been found, 2 days ago, by a patrolling shinobi group in a ditch on the road midway towards Otafukagai. Tsunade's voice was firm as she spoke. Their corpses were in an advanced state of decomposition, but we managed to easily identify them by their clothes and the fact they were missing by more than a month. The Godame grimaced. Brigands probably got to them when they left Konoha. Sakura's breath hitched in her throat. She felt the air grow heavy, the world start to spin. Why was the world shifting? Was she falling? No, she wasn't. Naruto grabbed her and held her steadily, like an anchor of rock in a tumultuous sea. She couldn't hold her tears for that. She just couldn't. She grabbed viciously onto Naruto, her arms encircling him as she vented off her tears and her screams of pain into his chest, her hands clenching tightly against the fabric of his clothes as she cried repeatedly her tears. She screamed the injustice through incoherent repetitions of the word no and shaking of her head. She cried until the tears that fell from her cheeks turned her eyes swollen and red. She didn't know when Naruto had taken her out of the Godame's office, or when he had started carrying her. She just knew that she found herself tightly held by him in his apartment, with him sitting on the sofa and holding her gently, but firmly all the same. She closed her eyes to his gentle touch over her locks of pink hair, to his caresses over her cheeks. She closed her eyes and cried herself to sleep over his soothing whispers, as he tried and failed to calm her down. She simply closed her eyes, and she slept. Her eyes opened to a warm, fluffy white blanket covering her, as the smell of food reached her nostrils. She felt her stomach tighten. She wasn't hungry, and she felt horrible. Her parents were dead. Her mom was dead. Her father was dead. They were both dead. Their corpses were rotting, probably in the obituary of Konoha's hospital. Did she really have to go there alone? She couldn't. They couldn't ask her to go there now, could they? But there was the funeral to be done, and she had to, because she was the only one still alive of her family, and if she didn't then maybe they'd come back as ghosts to haunt her or worse. Her thoughts came to an abrupt halt when she realized she couldn't hear Naruto's footsteps around the house. Had he left her there? She hesitantly removed the covers from her face, to blink at her surroundings. She was in Naruto's bedroom. The boy was nowhere she could see, but then again the door wasn't open. She bit her lips and slowly turned her gaze to the bed desk, from where the smell of food came. Her favorite dumplings stood there in a row, with a cup of hot tea and a hastily scribbled note on. She rubbed her eyes slightly, slowly getting up to sit on the side of Naruto's bed. The note was brief and to the point. I went to get Sensei. She'll know what to do. I'm coming back soon. Don't worry, Naruto. She closed her eyes and exhaled slowly, before looking at the food with disdain. She wasn't hungry, and a few of those dumplings seemed to have been handmade. Her eyes widened in realization as she stood and carefully walked out of the room, to look at the state the kitchen was in. Naruto hadn't wanted to leave her alone, so much that he had actually made the dumplings by hand, with what he had around. Baka, Sakura murmured to herself, a small crying note underneath her words. He's a baka. She clenched her fists and shook her head. Stupid, my stupid teammate. Sakura couldn't just wait there doing nothing, or she would truly go mad, which was why, by the time Naruto came back with Sensei in tow, Sakura had already cleaned the kitchen. She had a light dusting of flour on her nose, which she hadn't noticed, otherwise Naruto was sure she'd have removed it, and she was holding the platter with the dumplings he had made. Sensei, Sakura murmured, looking at Yugao's stern face that slowly melted away into genuine worry. The pink-haired girl dropped the plate on the table's now clean surface, before she was hugged gently by the woman who she had, in a fit of justifiable jealousy, called a cradle robber. Sakura, she whispered. I'm sorry, Yugao murmured. I'm so sorry. Are you fine? Do you need a hand with the funeral? I don't know. Sakura's shoulders began to tremble. What do I do in this situation? I don't know, they don't teach you that at school. Do I have to go and see their bodies? No, you don't have to unless you really need to, Yugao murmured, her right hand firmly grabbing the girl's shoulder. How about you stay here for the time being? She's not a trouble for you, Naruto, right? No trouble at all, Sensei, Naruto whispered back, his face sporting a brief and small smile. I'll take care of her. Nice line, harem lord, a crisp and clear voice sounded from the door, as Sai slowly entered the room. My condolences, he said then to Sakura with a small bow. I heard. Naruto frowned. From who? Master Jiraiya was told by the Godame Hokage a few minutes ago. He sent me here. Sai shrugged. Thanks, Sai, Sakura whispered, her arms slowly coming to embrace herself with her gaze downcast. Yugao-sensei nodded to Naruto, and then left from the window. I brought food, Sai remarked. I have seen it is the only thing Naruto thinks of when someone is wounded, he added then calmly. He opened a scroll and placed it on the kitchen counter, before letting it release a cloud of smoke and warm vapors coming from the food. Ramen, he added then. For everyone. Naruto's sweat dropped. Are you trying to console Sakura or me, Sai? Cherry, Sai remarked. And she's generally happy when you are happy, he brought up both eyebrows. You didn't realize that? Sakura stammered and blushed, averting her gaze from both of her stupid teammates. Naruto chuckled nervously. Well, let's sit down and eat then. As they ate, Naruto wondered out aloud. Nay, Sai? Did Jiraiya-sama tell you when you're going to leave next? Sai nodded. Tomorrow morning, Sakura spluttered and Naruto nearly choked on his ramen bowl. He grimaced. So you really brought the ramen for me, didn't you? I suspected you would be sad, Sai replied. Don't be, he added then with a shrug. I'll be back. Is that a promise? Naruto asked, his right hand holding tightly on the chopsticks used. Sai looked back at the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi with an awkward glance. I'll try my best. What if your best isn't enough? Sakura whispered softly. Then I'll just have to do more, Sai shrugged. What about you, dickless? Naruto exhaled, and then shook his head. Tsunade-sama has found me a private instructor. I am to report tomorrow morning on Training Ground 29. That's the one with the Nidame's waterfall, Sai commented. Cherry? Tomorrow morning, Training Ground 44, Sakura swallowed. Yugao-sensei said to be there? Naruto did not comment on that, simply taking another gulp of noodles. Will you go? Of course I will, Sakura scoffed, albeit it came out more like a mixture between a grimace and a frown. At least, it'll help me distract myself. Naruto waited expectantly for Sai's quip. He knew Sai would be saying something like why dickless doesn't satisfy you enough or something similar. He just knew it. Yet Sai remained quiet. He remained quiet all throughout the time he spent with them, just until he was about to leave. The sun was setting after all. Naruto? Sai said quietly, and because of that Naruto tensed. He had used his name. Rather than calling him dickless or harem lord, that meant it had to be something important. I need to talk to you. Sakura was reading a book in the kitchen, her mind lost in the series of the His collection. Outside, Naruto nodded, half closing the door behind him as he stepped on the balcony. Sai exhaled slowly as he took out a scroll from his jacket. This is for you. The next moment, Sai disappeared in a flicker of leaves. Naruto frowned and slowly moved his hand to unclasp the scroll. Inside there was a simple technique and a scribbled note in ink. The summoning technique requires the following hand signs: Boar Dog Bird Monkey Ram. Not having a contract will guide you to the realm of summons you share an affinity with. In case of great harm, use this technique to escape. Naruto remained perplexed. Was this everything Sai had meant to give him? Why make it such a secret then? Why not just hand it over and be done with it? Why deliver it? It was as he closed the scroll again that a small slip of paper fell from it on the ground. The Jinchuriki bowed down to grab it, and then slowly brought it up to read. His eyes widened, his skin paled, His breathing grew ragged. Calmly, he clenched the hand that held the bit of paper and ate it, without leaving behind a trace as he swallowed it down. He turned to look inside, to where Sakura was cradling a blanket while reading one of the most renowned horror collections the elemental countries had ever created, one about a psychopathic red-haired who used chains to skin and flail alive girls. And he slowly entered his apartment once more. He closed the door behind him, and gently sat next to Sakura, whose head then instinctively dropped against his shoulder as she kept on reading. "Is it any good?" "Sure," she whispered. "It's better than a movie. You can't have my Enchan. He's mine. Mine." Flesh stripped and blood pooled as beneath the full moon the mad woman laughed a bittersweet melody of madness. Her crazy crimson eyes looked wide and in delight as the young Enchan cried, while the psychopathic pulled out her pink locks. "And now you are going to die, ugh, true love conquers all fears." The stalwart hero arrived from the window, having dug deeply his blessed golden sword into the back of the monstrous woman who had turned horrendous because of unrequited love. "Begone, foul demon! Begone, my hero!" Enchan cried in joy. "It is I, Enkuen, and his trustworthy assistant, Kei-sama." A snake hissed standing on his shoulder. Naruto blinked. "Do you know the author?" "Yoru no Kage," Sakura murmured back as she closed the book. "He's second spot on the elemental country's writers list. That old pervert is the first," she scoffed. "I don't know why though." "Yeah," Naruto chuckled briefly. "There are a lot of perverts around, aren't there?" She hummed her understanding, before dropping her arms limp over her body, snuggling her head closer to the crook of Naruto's shoulder. "Can I stay here tonight?" "Of course, Sakura," he replied. "You don't need to take anything from your house?" She smiled sadly and shook her head. Aoba-sensei used to say to always keep something of everything on your person. She tapped one of the Chunin vest's pockets on her. "I've got my change of clothes right here." "Sealed?" Sakura nodded. "A scroll per Chunin, to do as they please, but if they rip it, then they have to buy another one." Naruto blinked. "I have to pass by the supply office then." "Yeah," Sakura snorted. "Good luck getting one before the end of the week." "You were supposed to be in the hospital," Naruto frowned. "How did you get one?" "I made doe eyes to the nurse," she smiled slightly. "Said I needed one or I just knew I would relapse and burn down half the hospital." A sweat drop appeared on Naruto's forehead. "And they believe that?" "No," she sighed. "But Yugao-sensei did provide me one of hers." Naruto chuckled. Sakura smiled. "Nay, Naruto-kun? Yeah? Can't we stay like this, forever?" Bakunoichi spoke softly, as she crossed her arms over her chest and gently turned to look with her emerald eyes at his face. "As Sakura? First we lost Ino," Sakura whispered, "then Aoba-sensei. The Sandaime is dead and, now my parents, can't." Naruto closed his eyes and hugged Sakura tightly. The girl's face morphed to surprise as both her eyes widened from such an action. The shock disappeared after a few seconds, replaced with a small content smile, just before she closed her eyes too, and hugged him back with a heartfelt sigh of relief. They remained like that for a few precious moments, before Naruto separated. I have to go somewhere tonight," he murmured. "I'll be back before long." He grabbed her shoulders firmly, and then Sakura's eyes widened as she felt him kiss her on the forehead. "You have a pretty forehead, Sakura-chan," he winked at her. "See you later." Sakura stuttered, stammered, blushed, looked around wildly and tried to get words in her throat, but failed spectacularly to do so. When she regained a minimum of self-control, Naruto was already gone. She exhaled and trembled slightly. Her face was crimson and vapor was coming out of her ears. Her hands went up to her burning cheeks as she looked around frantically. No, calm down," she giggled to herself. "It's nothing," she giggled again. Now, calm down. What do you do? What do we do? What do I do?" She scampered to her feet. "I need a shower." "Yes, I need a shower." She jumped in the bathroom as if her life depended on it, all the way blushing and giggling madly. Naruto's eyes instead focused on the tombstone of the Sandaime. It was one among many, and yet it had a bit more of breathing space before the other tombstones. There was only his name, his titles, and the year of his birth and death. He clenched his fists in front of the tomb and then, firmly, his gaze went to the hospital of Konoha. "If it's true, old man," he croaked out. "If it's the truth," he exhaled. "I will show Konoha no mercy." The basic of infiltrating is to appear not suspicious, not to be invisible to the enemy. Danzo spoke crisply. "You know this already, don't you, Naruto?" "Mingle with the crowd," Naruto muttered. "Change appearance to suit what is supposed to be there." He jumped up against the wall, clasping his hands to the surface and then crawling upwards. He did not use chakra, but kept to the shadows as he prowled his way up with the kunai as a climbing tool. He ground his teeth firmly as his eyes narrowed on his destination, a ledger that gave into a patient's room. Not just any patient's room, but the level with the intensive care shinobi, the ones who would not wake up when he entered. He looked through the window, holding on to the edge and then pulling himself up to hug the window's frame. The room had a patient inside, and the door on the other side stood close. Firmly, he grabbed the point of his Yoroi Tanto and let wind chakra condense on the tip. Carefully, Naruto cut the wooden panel in the middle of the window neatly. The boy's hand caught the lower side and gently propped it against the wall. He crouched down on the other side, keeping a kunai in hand. He was in friendly territory, but he was not going to hesitate on this, not on this. He opened silently the drawer of the room, taking a patient's gown and putting it on. The hospitals had seals interwoven with the walls, to know if a patient was outside, but also to know if a foreign shinobi was inside beyond the visiting hours. In the intensive care unit, of course, people didn't expect their patients to leave, so he had an opening. He pressed his ear against the door, and stopped breathing to hear if someone was on the other side. When nothing was forthcoming, he pushed slightly the door open. He slipped out of the crack, before jumping on the surface of the ceiling and remaining attached to it. People look forward, behind, to the sides, up and down come later. When that comes, do not stop. To be stealthy does not mean to remain immobile. It means to not fear moving in silence. He crawled his way, keeping out of the neon lights. If he casted off a shadow, it wouldn't do. His careful prowling brought him to the stairs. He knew there was at least a chunin rank watching the first floor. The nurses patrolled at regular intervals, and with the time, the patients had already eaten. Naruto exhaled firmly. As he locked his gaze with the ground floor, he could jump down and run across the lift's cage, and if timed it correctly, he saw the head of the guard on the ground floor. It was good enough. He began to run downwards, letting the momentum and the terminal velocity increase his speed. Even the slightest hit on the head can give a concussion, Naruto, and someone knocked out will not wake up easily afterwards. His eyes shone coldly as his right fist slammed with all the strength he could muster against the guard's side of the face. The chunin's body twisted from the impact, but Naruto's other hand grabbed the flying body by the ankle and slammed it on the ground together with him. Naruto hissed in pain, but stood up before slamming his right hand against the chunin's mouth. The man was dazed, all right. The hospital entrance was devoid of life. He dropped the guard in a seated position, with her face cradled by her hands. He unhooked the keys from her side and then looked around. The obituary floor. He had to reach the obituary floor. There was only the lift. He mentally cursed. Bodies were important to shinobi villages. Every step would be hard to go through, unless he had the knocked-out guard and smirked. Kotetsu was waiting for his pal to swap with him. The bodies did not look favorably that night, and he frankly would rather enjoy staying above rather than below in the freezing cold. The doors of the lift dinged and their Izumo came out. He stopped and looked around, before smiling and nodding in his direction. "Took you long enough, Izumo," Kotetsu remarked as he slowly walked forward. Izumo walked with ease towards him, smiling and shrugging. "Upstairs, all yours." Kotetsu brought up his right hand to clasp on Izumo's in their usual greeting, when a strong blunt trauma impacted against his balls. Another soon followed it on the side of his face, and a third one then slammed him on the ground. He was about to scream, when a kunai came down on his neck. "Scream and you're dead meat," Izumo gruffly remarked. "Now sleep," and the fist that came against his face, yeah, that one hurt him to unconsciousness and beyond. Naruto removed his bloodied fist from the other chunin's broken face. He stood up and looked around, before grabbing onto the shinobi's body and carrying it with him. His eyes settled on the set of seals carved around the columns of the obituary room. It was obvious they checked for intruders. At the same time, they could not work always, so something had to deactivate them, something like being in the presence of a keyed chunin, who however could not simply accept the job as a lifetime one. Therefore there was a slip of paper, a something that connected to the seal matrix, and allowed one entrance without triggering the traps. Naruto was on a time schedule, or he would have checked for a paper slip in the chunin's pockets. He dropped the body near the last of the metallic boxes that supposedly contained the corpses of the dead shinobi. Calmly, his right hand went to the handle of the thing. If Sai had told him the truth, he swallowed nervously. What was he doing? He had attacked fellow Konoha shinobi. He had acted without thinking, or planning. This couldn't be true. He couldn't be doing this now. He could have asked. When someone is kept hostage, and the risk of the location being found is high, the hostage is relocated. Sai had to be lying to him, but he never had lied before. He was about to push the handle down when he stilled. There had to be traps on the thing too. He looked beneath and behind the handle, using the forehead protector as an impromptu mirror, and there the seal was, hidden behind it. He looked to the bleeding corpse of the Chunin standing guard. If it's a normal corpse holder, then nothing happens because he's keyed in. If something happens, then it's not normal and I have to be quick. Naruto's breathing grew ragged. Come on, Naruto, you can do this. He closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. You can do this. He grabbed the Chunin's hand and pulled him against his shoulder, before firmly clasping around the handle the man's limb and pulling it down. He substituted with the chair on the other side of the obituary just in time. A gas explosion of sickening purple color exploded from the corners of the room, as the exit closed down with thick steel bars. Naruto brought his forehead protector to his nose and concentrated chakra to his right hand in a twirling tornado. The poison spun and flew, sucked in by the concentrated air. He held his right hand to the side, before launching the obnoxious gas beyond the steel bars to dissipate in the lift, the doors of which closed a moment later. He didn't have much time. He charged ahead through the still closed panel, calling forth his air technique to rend at the steel panel with his Yoroi Tanto. The wind chakra sparked against the metal, as the sound of grinding occupied the entire room as Naruto's teeth grit furiously. Open! Open! Work! Open! He growled as he poured his chakra into the Tanto that could cut through samurai's plates. Wind chakra and chakra steel sliced in half the panel, allowing him to gaze into a handle that he could twist. He slammed his Naruto Uzumaki against the handle, watching it spin as the sides of the panel burst in a cloud of needles. Another trap, brute force through. Whatever is in here, it's well kept, Naruto murmured. The floor near him suddenly caved in, revealing stairs of stone that descended in a spiral. No time, he chuckled to himself as he heard an explosion rock through the lift's canal. They had probably used explosives or fire to dissipate the poison. Naruto jumped down the spiral stairway, slapping explosive tags alongside. There probably was not another exit, but as long as he had enough time, and he probably wouldn't be going to Inoichi's counseling. If the man entered his mind, the tags detonated behind him, just as he reached a wider chamber filled with wooden archways and a wood floor. Debris fell on his back as he spun around, kunai in hand. The entrance had caved in, good enough for him. He exhaled and looked around calmly. Tables filled with dust and glowing green crystals that hung from the ceiling filled most of the room, but at the end of it, sitting in a sort of cross-legged position, was a giant statue with 9 eyes. Chains of pure gold surrounded the statue's frame, as they seemed to come from the floor beneath the statue itself. 9 eyes, of which 2 were open and looking at him. Naruto's breath hitched as he felt a sickening sensation pull through his guts. He groaned and clutched his chest, before slowly stumbling with his right hand against the surface of the desk closest to him. His heart began to beat erratically as he started to frantically look around once more. "Mom?" he croaked out. "Mom, are you here?" "Why?" Sai had said. He had written. He heard a loud gurgling. It seemed to come from the base of the statue itself. He hesitated. The golden chains were familiar to him. They resembled those Mito used. He ran forward, only for the sensation of pulling to intensify in his chest. He screamed in pain as he fell on the ground, clutching his stomach. He moved closer. He clenched his teeth and sobbed as he took another step, and then one more. He screamed to himself as he finally stumbled towards the border of the chasm that apparently separated him from the statue, which sat on a column of wood, and beneath it, a mass of tumorous flesh from which departed golden chains, with medical hooks and needles attached to the gangrenous pulsing mass that could not be considered human, and yet, it looked so much like those monsters Orochimaru. No, it couldn't. Naruto's vision blurred as tears began to fall down his cheeks. His tears dropped from his chins and fell down, in the pitch-black darkness where a moaning and suffering body, bloated by the gangrene that painfully ate away at its life was. A body that twisted and pulled, a body that was. "No," he murmured. "Why?" He crawled away from the spot, the tightening sensation in his chest increasing the more he tried to fight and leave the horrible place. He bitterly slammed his fists on the desk closer to him. Why? He laughed. "Why?" he chuckled. "Why?" His eyes narrowed down to mere pools of crimson, and they shone like embers. "Why did you do this, old man? Why? Oh my!" A voice soon echoed in the room. Naruto's body spun as he launched a dozen of shurikens against the figure in question, a masked and cloak-wearing man. The shurikens passed through the body with ease as the masked man looked at him with curiosity. If one wearing a mask could do so. "Who are you?" Naruto snarled as his hands clenched against his Yoroi Tanto. The chakra that pooled out was purple and golden, as sand and chakra seemed to flow through the blade, giving off a spectral-like appearance to it. "I'm Tobi!" The figure clapped his hands excitedly. "I'm a good boy," it said with annoying tone as it walked forward. "And you," his voice grew colder, "have trespassed on Konohagakure property." The figure nodded. "As a good boy of Konohagakure no Sato, I have to punish you," he sing-sung. "Unless," Naruto snarled and charged at the figure, his entire frame passing through it with ease as the enemy grabbed him by the ankle and slammed him on the floor. "Listen," his voice was quiet now as he held him down, disarming him at the same time. "They're coming. They'll blow up the room and come in," Tobi murmured. "I can bring you out of here, to safety," the cloaked figure murmured. "But you have to let go for now, understood? They're using my mother as a beast." Danzo said to trust him? He said to trust him? This is what I trusted him for. My mom's a fist slammed into Naruto's back. "Calm down or you'll let them win," Tobi hissed. "You don't want to let them win, do you? You don't want to let the enemy win. You want to win, don't you? Everyone loves to win." Naruto's breathing grew ragged. "What are you talking about?" Not enough time to explain. They'd got the Godame opening the road now. There was a loud rumbling. "I'll take you away from here for the moment. I'll let you talk with a friend." Naruto felt his body collapse on himself, as he was sucked into what looked like the cloaked man's eye. Wasn't that the Sharingan? The moment he landed on the other side, he found himself into a world made of white cubes that had a sort of perpetual gloom hanging around it. There was another cloaked man on the same square he was sitting on, and the man's eyes as well as forehead protector caught his attention. The man's eyes were twin Sharingans. The man's forehead protector, it was slashed. "Did Madara send you here?" The boy's voice was monotone as it spoke. "I suppose. Would you like to chat?" Naruto tensed and took a defensive posture. A clattering on the ground near him made him move his eyes to the side, where his Yoroi Tanto appeared from nowhere. He lowered himself to grab the blade, and the next instant he felt a kunai press against his neck. "If I wanted you dead, do not believe you would as much as have managed to take a single breath in my presence," the man spoke coldly. "We need to talk," he whispered. "You're a missing nin," Naruto murmured back. "Are you sure?" Itachi retorted, bringing up an eyebrow. "What if I've been following orders up until now in deep cover?" Naruto shuddered. "You'll kill me if I try to escape?" "There's no escape from here," a third voice spoke then. "Unless I take you outside," the masked figure spoke crisply, his body slowly forming in the space right next to Naruto. "Now, Naruto-kun," the masked man said. "We need to talk." "About what?" Naruto trembled as he tried to hold his grasp on the Yoroi Tanto. He hadn't seen the Uchiha missing nin, and he hadn't seen the other man attack him. They were both Jounin level. They had to be that or even beyond, maybe Anbu or worse. There was no way. About the deep darkness, rooted within the breast of Konohagakure, the masked shinobi made a small bow. "The darkness which consumes all light, which drowns the village into a despair so thick there can be no survival. The darkness, brought forth by the Sandame's foolishness," Itachi murmured. "And by the need for peace." "What are you talking about?" "The Kyuubi attacked on the night you were born," the masked man spoke. "But who, exactly, knew where you were being birthed?" "Few people," Itachi nodded. "The Sandame, the Yandame, the wife of the Sandame, 2 medic Chunin." Itachi's eyes turned to their Sharingan form. "And my mother. What does that have to do with what I saw?" The Uchiha clan was considered second best, since the Naidame Hokage named them the police of Konoha, holding them in the outskirts and making the other clans hate them. And the prideful Uchihos, they could not understand that, could they? The masked man spoke. "You see, they didn't want to remain the second best for long," the cloaked figure chuckled. "So, what could they do?" The cloaked figure's shoulders began to tremble. "It all began in the Third Shinobi War, with Kirigakure." The mask slowly was unclasped, to reveal a dark-haired man with half of his face pale and the other half looking older than normal. They found a way to seal their bijou into a young kunoichi of Konoha, to try and send her back to the village, and then unleash the demon. The man's face moved to the side, to reveal an empty eye socket. Had they managed it, the village would have been destroyed. But they didn't, Itachi supplied, because the attack was stopped. By Obito Uchiha, Itachi's Sharingan moved to where the other man was, who simply scoffed. "You knew from the beginning who I was. Calling myself Madara was just a way to attract a possible prodigy in my camp." "Yes," Itachi nodded. "So, Naruto, you are the chief of a village and you have been shown a way to utilize Jinchuriki, and their bijou, which does not risk your own shinobi. You just need to plant the bijou in a person, send her back to her village, and then you have to unleash the beast." I sentenced to death my teammate, Obito murmured, when I told the plans of Kirigakure to the Hokage, and I didn't even know it then. He shook his head. You know, when I opened my eyes after the battle against the enemy ninjas, when I found myself healed, the first thing I did was to return to Konoha. When I stupidly revealed my Manjikyu power, hoping for a promotion to Jounin of all things, blind and naive fool that I was, the Sandaime had me keep myself dead, as a deep cover operative with few ties. I was invaluable, he tapped his Manjikyu, and with this, no security was too tight. Peace was maintained throughout the land but the thought remained rooted into the mind of the Sandaime. Itachi spoke next. What if a weapon test could be conducted with a different bijou? What if the Kyuubi could be unleashed on another village? Only an Uzumaki could seal the Kyuubi within them, and the Uzumaki, as Mito showed, could survive the extraction of the Nine Tails. Naruto began to tremble. My mother was a kunoichi of Konoha, Itachi continued. She would have sacrificed herself for the village, of course, but would her son do so too? There weren't any Uzumaki nearby totally loyal to the village, and loyalty, in this world, is more valued than anything else. The one who did it, on the other hand, was not troubled by such things, Obito murmured. Danzo Shimura. He ordered me to conduct a weapon test. If the Uchiha could control the Kyuubi as the legends said, then an Uchiha Jinchuriki would be a veritable weapon of mass destruction, Obito nodded. You see, Naruto, Itachi said, both the Sandaime and Shimura had different ideas on what to do and what end to achieve. Shimura Danzo wanted the Manjikyu and the Kyuubi to be usable in any Jinchuriki, to ensure a weapon that could be controlled as long as there was a Manjikyu active. The Sandaime wanted a weapon that in dire straits could be unleashed and then resealed again, with minimum risks. But all of that was based only on one particular circumstance: that the Jinchuriki could survive the extraction and have a substitute available, Obito murmured. The only recorded history told about Mito Uzumaki being able to survive long enough to watch the Kyuubi sealed in Kushina Uzumaki, and nothing more. It was not enough. It needed to be tested. The cloaked man shook his head. But the Uzumaki had been wiped out by the time Kushina had grown. Nothing remained of them except a few, stranded too far out of the village's control to regain. Only Kushina Uzumaki was in the village. And then she became pregnant, Itachi continued as Naruto's blood-freezing chill made the boy shudder. And thus there now were two Uzumaki in the village. It was Danzo who gave the order, but given time, the Sandaime would have probably asked if Kushina would have wanted to try being freed of the Kyuubi. Naruto's knees gave away as he fell on the ground. What happened? I was the sole possessor of the Manjikyu in Konoha at the time, Obito spoke crisply. I was ordered to free the Kyuubi on that day and then implant it in another child. The test was to see if it could work. If any child could work as long as I was there with the Manjikyu, then there was no need for the Uzumaki, and the Manjikyu could be passed down to whoever needed it. The man's right hand went to gesture at Itachi's face, especially to the Uchiha, who could naturally produce a Manjikyu given the right form of training and whose loyalty would thus be proven undoubted. And the child chosen was my brother, Sasuke, Itachi murmured. But the Yondaime wasn't told of that, and he intervened. Obito scoffed. Who wouldn't? Be wary of the Uchiha. Kill them if the choice is to be made. Leave none alive. Whatever happens, do not trust any of them, ever, and don't trust the Kyuubi. He might be a prisoner against his will, but that does not make him any less dangerous or sinless. Naruto closed his eyes and exhaled slowly. Get to the point, he snarled. What does that have to do with the way, with how my mother was? An infant Jinchuriki is not a menace, Obito murmured. The Sandaime refused to extract the Kyuubi from you, the Manjikyu method hadn't been demonstrated, and there were no other Uzumaki in the area that could work well enough, he shook his head. Kushina Uzumaki was catatonic, to say the least. Attempts to bring her back were ineffective. To counteract that, Orochimaru began testing the cursed seal of earth, which he used to fake being the new Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. He thought that if chakra could reach her, then a mean for communication would be achievable. And since Senjutsu chakra could travel through nature itself, he was right, Obito grimaced. And wrong at the same time, because your mother's sanity was slowly eroded by the seal, she had to be locked up. But her skill in containing bijou and her special chakra, which she did not develop, it couldn't be removed and it couldn't be left alone, it had to be harvested. He took a step back, before slowly placing both of his arms behind his back. Hashirama kept the tailed beasts into the statue you have seen. When he gifted them to others, he held the statue, which had been gifted down his line all the way from the Sage of the Six Paths. Naruto closed his eyes. Did the Sandaime know? He had no choice but to comply. Naruto, Obito smiled. Because if he didn't, then who would be holding the statue back from being summoned by pain? Who would be holding the captured bijou inside of it? Who would? You. You can't even control your bijou. You're a useless Jinchuriki, an average chunin, maybe with some bright points, but you need polish, a lot of it. The Uchiha shook his head. So why am I here? Because you managed to get there. I don't know who told you. I don't know how, but you saw, and now it can't be hidden any longer from you. The truth, this truth, it's yours. What will you do with it now? Your mother is nothing more than a husk of gangrenous flesh used to hold down a monstrous weapon that in the hands of pain would mean the end of the world as you know it. Orochimaru was burned by the Sandaime, by Danzo. People cannot be trusted, Naruto. Then why should I trust you? He screamed back at the man. Because I can change this. Obito whispered. With the power of the Jinchuriki, with your power, with your blood, you can become the Jinchuriki of the Jubi. And then we can extract it without killing you, and we can use his power, the power of the Sage of the Six Paths himself, and cast the techniques spoken of in myth, creation of all things, Naruto, everything, this entire rotten world can be rewritten. Obito screamed as he clasped both hands on Naruto's shoulders. No death. No shinobi. No samurai. No chakra. No wars. No blood. No betrayals. A world of truth. A world of ideals. Rewritten into purity, into honesty, a world where filth cannot live. A world where death does not happen, where everyone can truly be happy. Such a world, Naruto. How can you say no to it? To a world where your parents are alive, where there is no blood, death. Can you refuse such a world lightly? Naruto's eyes widened in disbelief as Obito finished talking. Or you can stay and wonder, when they extracted Sora's chakra, when they ordered you to kill, did they do it to show how Konoha was strong, or how dangerous you were? And if the latter, did they do it because they wanted you feared, or because they wanted you removed? Obito asked then with a small grin. You see, Naruto, the Godane doesn't know you, and she is in her position because Orochimaru told her. Obito winked. Soon, you will be asked to head to a secret location. Soon, you will be brought to train with someone able to control your bijou, and soon, you will be harvested. You are a tool of Konoha, Naruto, Itachi spoke firmly. But it doesn't have to end this way, with you used up and discarded. It doesn't have to end with you dead to fulfill the need of a village built on the bones of innocence. He extended his hand. Come with us, we can train you, make you stronger, and then, together, we can strike down Orochimaru, claim his powers for our own, his army for us, his technology. And we can destroy those who oppose us. Don't you want to be happy for once, Naruto? Don't you want to be selfish? What if you're lying? Naruto croaked. Then, Itachi remarked. We'll give you proof. Obito nodded. Go back home. He clapped his hands on Naruto's shoulders. And wait tomorrow, then tell me if they assigned you a sensei, or a jailer. And Naruto disappeared in a twirling motion, only for his surroundings to shift and morph. He staggered and landed thus in his room, where Sakura was sleeping softly on his sofa with the book of the His collection over her face, wearing a pair of loose pants and a sweatshirt. By the smell in the room, she had probably taken a shower and had fallen asleep waiting for him. He shuddered all of a sudden, bringing down both of his hands against the wooden floor as tears began to pool down his eyes. This piece, was built on pain, his pain, that of his mother, that of the shinobi who, he clenched his eyes tightly, as if doing so could keep the thoughts away. He couldn't do this, but he had to. Therefore, he gently nudged himself next to Sakura's sleeping form, letting the blanket cover him too and then trying to fall asleep. He could do as he always did when he was little. If he ignored the problem, then maybe it would leave, and if it didn't, then he would have to find a solution. Until then, however, he tried to fall asleep, trying to forget the fleshy pulsing mass of gangrenous organs that apparently was his mother. He tried to forget the pain in his chest and the despair he felt being in that room. He tried to forget the nervousness of having entered a shinobi hospital, and he mentally cursed. He had the patient's gown on still. He slowly undid the knot on the back of his neck, and then let it fall behind him on the floor. He slowly stumbled back, tightly compressing the gown and then looking outside his room. He could see the hospital far off being lit up like a Christmas tree, and he just knew the Anbu patrols would increase after that day. With the use of wind, he carefully shredded the gown to small dust pieces. What he failed to see, behind him, was Sakura's eyes staring at his back with a perplexed expression. When he did turn, Sakura's face was still asleep. He sighed in relief and headed back to his spot on the sofa. With a low moan, Sakura's hands clasped against his jacket, and her face snuggled closer to his chest. "Naruto?" she whispered in a half-asleep tone. Naruto tensed and froze, before slowly relaxing when no other words came through. The silence stretched as the time went by, until in the end, Sakura murmured with a barely audible voice, "I love you," and to those words, Naruto did not know how to react. Chapter 42: The Reconciliation of Broken Hearts. The man that waited for Naruto at the training ground, the next morning, was a pale-skinned and emotionless-looking shinobi that could have passed off as Sai's father, if Naruto hadn't been sure Sai had been birthed from a pool ink made of sarcastic remarks. His forehead protector was one of the old models, which covered also the sides of his face and had the symbol of the leaf engraved on, rather than the metallic plate stitched to the piece of cloth. The training ground had a waterfall in a corner, which gushed out water that proceeded to form a river that then continued all the way through the various training grounds, from the 44th to the 7th and beyond. The man looked at him for a moment, before he gave a polite bow in his direction. "Come at me with the intent to kill, Naruto Uzumaki," he assumed a defensive posture. "Let me see if you're worthy of the rank of Chunin." Naruto swallowed once and schooled his heart. The wind blew in the clearing, scattering the light dusting of dirt from the ground in the air. He sliced his palm and flung the kunai. It soon collided with another, and to the spark of the two weapons meeting, Naruto charged ahead as fast as he could. The Jounin was just toying with him. The man's speed was nothing he could reach without training, but arrogance was the first step to defeat. Shurikens departed from Naruto's sleeves, short and controlled bursts of wind ejecting them towards the Jounin's direction. When they passed overhead, Naruto's fist came against the man's face when the Jounin crouched. His fist met a solid surface that soon began to sizzle. Naruto had barely the time to slam a kick into the wooden trunk covered in explosives and send it to fly that it detonated into deadly shrapnel. Metallic caltrops and shurikens had filled the insides of the trunk, and as the explosion tore apart the wood, so too did it unleash the metallic shower in the area. The blood on Naruto's hand attracted the sand from the ground, which lifted itself to form a shield the size of the boy's head on the areas the weapons tried to hit. Naruto snarled as he looked around the empty clearing. He heard a soft rumbling noise from the ground, which forced him to jump in the air and begin his work on the hand seals required just as the Jounin emerged with both his hands to grab at the boy's ankles. The wind blades erupted from his mouth and tore through yet another one of those wood bunshin. Naruto carefully skidded to a halt near the waterfall. His eyes narrowed and another kunai was in his hand. He just had to find a way to get to the real body. To be on the safe side, he placed a bunshin in his place and slowly lowered himself in the water, holding his breath. The water was freezing cold, but he was sure he could stay there for at least 5 minutes. He heard the soft rumbling of the waterfall behind him, while in front and above him his bunshin dispersed because of a volley of shuriken. Ninja battles generally went with brief bursts of activity followed by long times of thinking. Shinobi used hit-and-run tactics, not brunt force winning. A cold, unsettling feeling fell on his shoulders as he slowly turned his head in the water to stare at the face of the Jounin inches away from him, a torchlight beneath the man's chin illuminating his visage like a ghost. Naruto screamed and water entered his mouth, forcing him to jump out and run. The man was bonkers. He flung a kunai with an explosive note attached against the river, watching the water detonate and expel wooden chunks from the water. "How many of those does he have?" Naruto murmured to himself. His feet landed on the ground, just as wood tendrils erupted to ensnare him. They grabbed at his ankles, quickly snaking their way upwards to entrap him completely into a wooden cocoon that sapped his strength. Naruto closed his eyes and exhaled, before pouring his chakra into the sand that floated near him, letting it grind through the wood and slash him a way out. "Interesting technique," the Jounin remarked. "It is not in your files." The man was now standing in front of him, his arms crossed. "Who taught it to you?" Naruto shrugged. "I came up with it. It seems more of a doton than a futon. What brought it up?" "Listen, I don't even know your name," Naruto began slowly, keeping himself warily ready for another attack. Just to be on the safe side, he substituted with a bunshin and stuck to the leaves of a nearby treetop. "I am Yamato," the figure spoke crisply. "Your private instructor, and the one particularly suited in teaching you a special technique." "Which is?" Naruto's right eyebrow rose in curiosity. The man's right palm came forward. Suiton, Hahanryu, water spiraled from the man's palm, forming a sort of miniature tornado. "Jiraiya-sama told me you have created a technique similar to this, albeit using only wind release or chakra." "You mean my Naruto Uzumaki? Is that the name chosen for the technique?" The other man made a small fey noise from his mouth, as if he found the thing endearing. I did not know you had such a pride. I don't, Naruto scoffed. It's just Maelstrom Whirlpool. Whirlpool would be a good name for a water technique, Yamato remarked. And Maelstrom is redundant, since it means a large whirlpool to begin with. Naruto exhaled and brought his right hand to scratch the back of his neck. I'm not good with names. I understand, Yamato nodded. How about calling it the Naruto once you learn how to put water release in it? Water release? I'm learning that already? Naruto scrunched his face up. Doesn't it require a long time to learn a release a shinobi doesn't have an affinity to? Yes, Yamato nodded. And unfortunately we will have to speed the process up with this. He grabbed a scroll from within his jacket and carefully handed it over. This is a forbidden technique, which comes directly from the forbidden scroll in the care of the Hokage, the Jounin murmured seriously. At that moment, Naruto sheepishly jumped down from the treetop and walked forward, only to be punched in the guts and sent careening against the wooden trunk of the tree. Nice substitution, but easy to see through when your bunshin forgets to breathe, Yamato said as he removed his fist from Naruto's guts. The boy groaned but slowly stood. His stomach was starting to learn how to avoid retching from the blows, and that attack hadn't even been all that strong. He looked down to find a light sheen of sand where the man had hit him. Ah, so the sand had protected him then. As I was saying, the Jounin's hand still clasped on the scroll. This is a kinjutsu of Konohagakure no Sato. You are forbidden from speaking of this technique to anyone else. You are forbidden from showing the hand seals required to learn it to anyone else. You are forbidden from executing this technique without express permission from your Jounin sensei, your Hokage, or whoever is the Taicho of your squad. Yamato's eyes narrowed on him. You are forbidden from mentioning knowing this technique. You cannot hint at possessing such technique. If your Taicho has been informed, he will let you know through a carefully prepared code phrase that you may use it. Yamato still held on to the scroll, making Naruto squirm uncomfortably in his spot. This technique is extremely chakra intensive. Only a few actually can learn it and utilize it, and you have been chosen to learn it because we are in a state of emergency. Only a few selected Jounin know of this technique, and of those few even less have a way of actually utilizing it fully. Naruto swallowed. What was the technique about, to have all those prohibition on? This, he gestured at the scroll, is the Kage Bunshin technique. He carefully handed over the small scroll to Naruto. You will learn this technique today, and you will do well to remember that knowledge of any kinjutsu directly tied to Konohagakure no Sato will mean your immediate termination should you betray your village. Should you decide to quit the shinobi world with the knowledge of said technique, you will be terminated. Yamato's eyes still pointed at Naruto's squirming form. This technique has ramifications and consequences upon usage on the battlefield that you would do better remember. This technique is extremely powerful, and extremely dangerous. I cannot stress this enough. Yamato's hands moved to clasp on Naruto's shoulders. But by being chosen to learn this technique, you have proven you are one of the most trustworthy shinobi of Konoha, and after you will learn it, I will induct you in Anbu. Naruto's eyes widened briefly. Anbu? He murmured, clenching the scroll. Indeed, all Jinchuriki belong to Anbu. They take orders directly from the Hokage, and they train to become the best they can be as defenders of the village. Yamato nodded. I came here to test you, and since Anbu work in pairs or squads to complete their missions in the best possible ways, we will be teamed up. Why? You do realize I have been using Mokuton release till now, right? The Jounin remarked carefully. I am best suited to control you, should you go out of the line like you did during the exams. And wait tomorrow, then tell me if they assigned you a sensei, or a jailer. Naruto grimaced. Doesn't entering Anbu require consent from the shinobi? In normal cases, yes, Yamato remarked with a nod. Unfortunately not in these circumstances. We are at war. We are in need of shinobi able to generate enough damage to stall our enemies. Orochimaru of the Sannin possesses superior firepower, and the only way to even the odds is to train you to become the turning point of this war. But only because Orochimaru has not yet begun firing upon Konoha does not mean he will not eventually start, Yamato quipped back. Where S-rank shinobi are involved, months or even years of preparation take place beforehand. The Kage Bunshin technique will help us train you and shorten the time needed to learn anything you might need in fighting him. He's an S-rank, Naruto whispered, paling visibly. You can't tell me You will, Yamato stressed out, not alone. Not tomorrow, but eventually you will face him and his army with the power of the Kyuubi, and you will win for the good of Konoha and the villagers. Naruto swallowed nervously, and closed his eyes. He had the question at the tip of his tongue, what if I don't? Or what if I don't want to? And he knew the answer was already chosen for him. It was on his forehead, the answer. He was a shinobi of Konoha. The moment he donned the forehead protector, he had made a choice. A choice he could end only with his death on the battlefield or of retirement in old age. If he refused, they'd extract the kyubi from him. He knew that, didn't he? They'd probably hold it in that statue of theirs deep down, but that would mean losing a war asset. No, they wouldn't do that. To keep him in check, to control him, they'd hit where they knew he would be hurt. Sai was away with Jiraiya. Sakura was training elsewhere. Divide and conquer was their tactic. He could see the underlying lines of thoughts and decisions the enemy had made. He imagined a set of thin strands of light that connected each individual to one another, and he just knew in that moment what would happen if he refused or left. First, they'd kill off Sai in some mistake. If he kept on refusing, a non-lethal accident would happen to Sakura. If he insisted, they'd kidnap her and hold her hostage. They'd probably try and convince him one last time, and if all of it failed, they had a mean to control his bija, didn't they? If the man, Obito, had said the truth, good, Yamato said roughly, narrowing his eyes on him. You understand the seriousness of the situation, and are giving it a good thought. This is good. Shinobi should always think before acting, because acting rashly with no plan can signify death. What if I don't learn the technique today? Naruto murmured. Then we will keep up during the night, Yamato replied. I hope there is no one waiting for you at home, because unless this technique is mastered you will not leave this training ground. Naruto swallowed once more. He unclasped the scroll and slowly began to read. The Kage Bunshin technique required the chakra of the user to split in half, just as it required a starting expenditure of chakra to make it work. Furthermore, a human body required a minimum amount of chakra in its body to work, and if it didn't, then chakra exhaustion or death could happen. The list of risks went on, ranging from deranged psychotraumatic multiple personalities disorders to depressive and suicidal thoughts, while moving on the list and arriving to the internal hemorrhage risks and brain death. The Kage Bunshin's purpose is normally that of exploring in safety an enemy location, the man remarked. Once the clone is destroyed, the knowledge of what it has seen automatically links back to the user's mind. Naruto nodded as he read. It was sort of what Mito had told him, albeit in that case it related to Senjutsu chakra. Orochimaru has this knowledge? He asked then carefully. The man looked at him for a moment, before nodding in resignation. He has. There was a light sigh. And there is no doubt his madness is tied to this in part, and something more I am not at the liberty of saying at present. Aren't you afraid I might become like him then? No, Yamato shook his head. The prolonged usage of the technique for long terms might, as Kage Bunshin tend to acquire a sort of sentience beyond that of their creator given enough time, the Jounin spoke. But no Kage Bunshin you create will ever be made to last beyond our training periods, and you will not use them in private, or anywhere where you cannot be supervised. So I'm loyal without a doubt now? Naruto murmured. Shouldn't I go through a Yamanaka's mind screw? The Kyubi might not like that, Yamato remarked. And if he doesn't? Konoha needs all the Jounin to prepare for an eventual outright war. The attack on the border hushed, we suffered some losses. Your peer group is being trained as we speak, the Jounin shook his head. The time of peace is coming to an end. The reign of the Godame Hokage will be known as one of war soon enough. And I'll herald it? Naruto asked dubiously. I don't know if they told you, but Naruto Uzumaki, Yamato spoke crisply. This is no longer a matter of the few. His eyes narrowed on him. The village of Konoha is not the land of fire. In case of war, the land of fire would suffer. Let me ask you, would you willingly let innocents suffer throughout the entire land? Would you let me die, their village razed to the ground? The first casualties of war are the farmers of the enemy, for no opponent fights well on an empty stomach. Crops burn and orphans wait down on the enemy's supplies. The elderly aren't spared out of mercy, but so that the mercy of the allies will weight them all down. What if I'm not ready? Then you will become ready, Yamato snapped. For the safety of Konoha, of the land of fire, of the daimyo, and of all those you consider your friends. Would you let the enemy claim their lives, because you refuse to act? Is this it? Are you a coward, Naruto Uzumaki? No! Naruto snarled back. But I don't like being used. He screamed at the Jounin. The Godame wants me to become a weapon. Then she'd better move her granitic old ass and tell me in person. I am supposed to be loyal without a fault. But where has the village shown its loyalty to me? Where is my side of the deal? You have received permission to train on techniques usually left for Jounin or Anbu rank shinobi, Yamato replied firmly. Is that not enough? I'm not a child who enjoys shiny jutsus or techniques. Naruto hissed. And this looks more like a loaded deal than a real one. He flailed around the scroll of the Kagebunshin. And you don't insert an Anbu shinobi who haven't proven their loyalty. Everyone knows that. Sure, you'd put me somewhere, but I doubt you'd be sending me to a real Anbu facility to train. There was a slight and brief widening of the pupil from Yamato, and Naruto caught it. I see, the boy sighed. You want to deal with me? I want to speak with the Hokage directly. He slammed the Kagebunshin scroll in the ground and turned around. I'm tired of being used. You want my cooperation and my powers? Then start groveling. Two could play that game. Naruto left unhindered, his steps taking him quickly towards the head of the Yondaime Hokage. He always enjoyed that place, even in youth. He sat down with his legs dangling from the sides of the monument's head and closed his eyes for a brief instant. It might just as well be his last moment of freedom after all. Hadn't those two elders said something about branding him with a seal after all? He didn't wait for long. Soon the figure of the Godaime Hokage appeared right next to him, her green jacket with the kanji for gambler written behind it. She had a frown on her face. Well? What are your terms, brat? Naruto raised an eyebrow as he stared perplexed at the woman. What? Your terms, the Godaime ground out. That's why you made such a fuss, right? Your terms. You're willing to listen? Tsunade snorted. Of course I am. If it depended on the assholes of the council, I'd have to knock you out and brand you. But we're sort of family apparently, she shrugged. Doesn't matter much, something like cousin 3 or 4 times removed, and maybe I'm your great-aunt or something like that. Naruto blinked. Yeah, he nodded. The Uzumaki married in the Senju, right? Yes, grandfather did do that, Tsunade sighed. Well? Don't tell me you acted like a peacock with ruffled feathers for no reason. I want guarantees, Naruto said. I want guarantees nothing will happen to my teammates, or the people I care about. His tone grew stronger as he spoke. And I want the truth. Why would anything happen to them? Tsunade raised an eyebrow. Only an imbecile would target the friends of a Jinchuriki. Enemy villages generally do their best to keep away, unless they're suicidal or were ordered to. I'm talking of the people in this village, Naruto ground out. If you try to use my teammates as hostages, I've got better ways of employing shinobi than keeping them inside the village, brat. Tsunade rolled her eyes. Are you paranoid? The old man never said a word about you being paranoid. He had nothing but praise, you know? That's why I gave the green light for the Kagebunshin. The council pressed it forward, but she shrugged. If the Sandaime hadn't vouched for you even in his death, I wouldn't have. Too risky to hand over to someone you can't check if he's loyal or not because you can't mind walk inside. You'd still go through this even after what I did? Naruto asked slowly. Why, brat, what do you want me to say? The woman crossed her arms over her bountiful chest and looked towards the village. You know, I hate this village. I hate these people. I hate seeing the civilians frolicking around in peace as if nothing happens, and I hate seeing the shinobi go around as if they own the place. I hate the arrogant assholes in the council, and I hate the way some of the clan leaders smirk and come in my office demanding this or that because of something the Sandaime supposedly did. I hate it all, and here I am as the Hokage. You want my hat? So why do you stay? Naruto asked, his voice dropped low. Because it's my village, Tsunade shrugged. And, no, there isn't a precise reason, it's just home. It took the old geezer menacing to tear down the Senju compound to remind me of that. Konoha is my home. She had a sad face on as she looked at him. But I suppose it never became yours, did it? My home? Naruto murmured. I suppose, it's where my teammates are. Good enough of an answer for the will of fire, I think, Tsunade said. Not enough to satisfy the old crones in the council, but then again, they'd keep on nagging anyway. Does being a shinobi mean to be used and enslaved? No, Kami, no, Tsunade rolled her eyes. I suppose a Jinchuriki can't choose to become a host for a demon, and that I think is what makes them all bitter. I met a few during my travels, scorned by the villagers, ignored or treated like criminals. It's not their fault, but the best treatment they receive is to be considered weapons of the village, like Kumogakure does. But we are never free, are we? Naruto murmured. And what if I simply wanted freedom? Is your idea of freedom any different from running away? Tsunade replied. I did that. Hell, if I did that. I lost everyone I cared about. I lost the man I loved, my only family, and then I left. I couldn't stand this anymore, and so, I went away. I escaped my chains, my duties as a kunoichi of Konoha. I hid my tracks and went on a spree of drinking and gambling so high that I ate up all my inheritance. But I still felt empty. It was such a dark abyss of despair that I believed it would never be filled. She tapped her right foot on the head of the yondaime. Your father was a great man. Tsunade made a small and brief smile. When he became Hokage, he could have sought me out for the war, but he didn't. He understood I needed time to grieve. If only he had known how long it would take for me, then maybe he wouldn't have let me go. But he did that all the same. She took a step forward and ruffled Naruto's hair. In the end, however, it all comes down to what you believe is right, rather than what you want or what someone else wants. What is it that you believe is right? Naruto breathed in slowly, before whispering. I want my mother freed from that horrible duty. Tsunade froze for a moment, before she slowly took a step backwards, her back to the boy. Ah, so it was you who entered the hospital, she spoke calmly. You knocked two Chunin out, entered private property of Konoha and whatnot. The council all but demanded me to execute the criminal who did it. She chuckled. Your mother was famous for getting on the nerves of them all. She knew she could get away with a lot of stuff, being the Jinchuriki, like, Tsunade chuckled. This one time, she colored in bright pink the entire Hyuga estate. It was a sight for sore eyes and it made the Hyuga mad. She snorted. Of course, I remember it also because my team was the one who had to clean up the mess. Naruto said nothing, his eyes fixed on the Godaime's back. You know that, if we do free your mother, the statue will be summoned by Pain? Who is this Pain to begin with? Naruto asked. Jiraiya didn't tell you? No, I suppose he wouldn't, Tsunade exhaled. Pain, he's the leader of Akatsuki. We don't know where he operates, or with whom he operates. We don't know where his base is, only that he gives orders through specific rings. Neither Tobi nor Uchiha managed to get close to him enough to know where his base was. Naruto frowned. It looked as if the Godaime didn't know what Obito's plan was, or as if she genuinely didn't know of their intended purpose. Or maybe she didn't know, and she wanted in. She had lost all the people she loved, hadn't she? But she seemed honest. Seemed. There no longer was or was not. There simply was the appearance, and the probability of honesty or deceit. My mom has suffered enough, Naruto murmured. That's my term, she remarked. That's a hefty thing, Tsunade replied, one which I would have no trouble granting, if Pain wasn't around. So what? She just has to keep on suffering like that? Like some sort of beast hooked on machines? That's inhuman and you know it. Naruto yelled, standing up, his accusing finger pointed at the Godaime. Yes, I know it, but do you know the countless deaths that would happen if she wasn't there? Her pain is the sacrifice to be paid to keep it down. Come on, Naruto. Do you think she wouldn't have found a mean to end her life if she wanted? She's hooked to machines, not rendered incapable of conscious decisions. She's doing this, she's holding the statue down because in the last vestiges of sanity that remain in her mind riddled with pain she knows she's saving your life and that of all the citizens of Konoha, Tsunade murmured with her voice cracked. Her pain is for the safety of us all, and you spit on her sacrifice for demanding something like this. And then she turned and faced him. Can't you see? Konoha isn't a village of saints, I understand that. But do you really believe my sensei would put your mother in that situation, if there wasn't a real reason for it? Do you think him such a heartless monster? Naruto! Can't you at least believe in some good in this world? Naruto swallowed nervously. If that's true, then why did you keep this away from me? I don't know what the Sandaime thought. But I know that if it had been me, I wouldn't have told you to avoid making you suffer through it. Do you enjoy knowing what your mother goes through daily? Do you enjoy this knowledge? Some things are better left unsaid, hidden away. You can't expect all knowledge to be pleasant. I probably think, if the Sandaime hid this from you, it was to protect you. Naruto laughed bitterly. Protect me? He snorted. Always about protecting me by keeping things hidden. Can't they just tell me? Is it too much to ask? As a child that would have hurt you too much, Tsunade whispered. I can suspect those were my sensei's thoughts. Nothing more, she shook her head. But if those are your terms, then I will try and find an alternative solution. Maybe some seals, or some form of space-time ninjutsu. Why? Because even though I hate Konoha, even though I hate its people, Tsunade made an awry smile, it's still my home, the place my loved ones sacrificed their lives to protect, and I will protect it, by incurring in whatever debt I need to with the devil itself. Naruto swallowed and took a step forward. His eyes stung. I don't, and the Godaime Hokage simply hugged the boy then, holding him firmly and gently caressing his hair. It's all right, she whispered. You can still cry, you can still be a child for a few moments, you don't have to always be prepared, or ready. Naruto closed his eyes and snuggled closer, feeling the old woman's warmth, even though she looked not a year past 20, and muttered a few words that were lost by the gentle pressure of his pressure against the woman's bosom. Tsunade simply smiled warmly, before mentally sighing to herself, Orochimaru. He would destroy the brat without a second thought. She just hoped that whatever time could be scrounged up would be used, because as it was, Naruto had no hopes whatsoever of defeating the Sannin. Still, if Jiraiya's Kage Bunshin gift proved worthwhile, maybe Naruto would have some semblance of family after all. Two Uzumaki and Konoha were better than one, after all. Just in case something went wrong with controlling the fox. In the forest of death, blades and kunai flew in the air. Shuriken and steel wire darted across the landscape, covering in a glint of metal the entire meadow. The fight had been going on since the early morning. Sakura exhaled as she flung a fireball against a hole in the ground, forcing her opponent to emerge and spin in midair, while launching Saban that missed her. Spinning giant shurikens sharpened by lighting chakra tore apart wooden branches, as loud curses echoed in unsuspecting places to distract the opponent. Sakura was in a bad place. Apparently, her training was a conjoined effort with Sensei, a purple-haired monster woman she no longer wished to recall the name of, and the gray-haired sensei of Sasuke. She was with the one-eyed jounin, Kakashi Hatake, and her training consisted of surviving the onslaught that went on. Her sensei was Anbu, and yet she too could not even begin to compare with the gray-haired jounin. The other woman had been thoroughly trashed in the beginning, when she had shown a Sharingan in her other eye. Maybe she wasn't the purple whore? No, she had to be. Her face was the same, and she had smiled at her with her usual horrible smile. Sakura was learning how to evade notice in the midst of battle, and as she discovered, the best place was directly under the line of fire. Shinobi naturally assumed only an imbecile would remain visible, thus going all in the underneath line of thought. This didn't make shinobi stupid, they simply devolved a slightly less amount of shurikens to a potential threat rather than a real and confirmed one. Still, one shuriken less to dodge or block made it a worthwhile strategy. Sakura! Get back! Kakashi barked the order, as she promptly dropped on the ground and charged ahead. The moment she did, the explosive volley of kunai that the two opponents launched ended up harmlessly hitting the spot she would have been, had she followed the command. She knew the jounin were just lightly training. Every now and then, a kunai departed from one of their hands with such a speed she could barely see it flicker in midair. One day that strength, speed and precision would be hers too. Until that day, however, she would train, she would become stronger, and then, she would be there for Naruto, for Sai. As they had been there for her, she would be there for them. Even if it meant having to face off against undefeatable odds. 2 days later, and the funeral of her parents happened. Few people came, and of those who did, less remained to offer their condolences. The owner of the Hibi restaurant did exchange some words of encouragement to the girl, just like a few others of the civilian shopkeepers and distant relatives who lived in the village. Sakura stood there firmly, smiling sadly, as she thanked for the kind words and clasped hands with the people she knew or had grown up with sometimes. Even Ami was in attendance, and she looked properly chastised to boot. Naruto stood next to her like some sort of immovable rock, his gaze firm and settled ahead. He had a grim face on and crossed arm over his chest, but he remained. The funeral was over after a few minutes, and as everyone went, Sakura found herself naturally following Naruto towards his apartment. That was where she had been sleeping for the past days. Her house held too many painful memories, and she was thinking about selling the bakery and the house altogether, to be at ease with her mind. She watched Naruto effortlessly and quietly pick up a few things along the way. Some of the stall vendors tried to say something, but there was that sort of angry glare on Naruto's face recently. It made her furrow her brows in perplexity. Naruto had never actually been angry with others. Generally, Naruto moped. Then again, he had changed since the beginnings of the team, and she had changed as well. She hadn't shed a tear at the funeral. She wasn't feeling like breaking down and crying. She had grown, matured. She knew she was no longer the naive little girl that dreamed of Sasuke-kun, and so she supposed Naruto had grown too. Now, if only she could manage to tell the boy what first mission they had assigned her separately from him. "Nay, Sakura," Naruto began with hesitation as he opened the door of his apartment and let her in. "There's something I have to tell you," he exhaled as he dropped the grocery bag on the table. What is it?" she asked as she began to slowly take out the vegetables from the brown bag. "Are you making vegetable soup tonight?" She removed a cabbage. "Cabbage? Do you plan on making a soup for tonight?" "Ugh," she grimaced while mimicking placing 2 fingers in her mouth. "It's disgusting." "No, that's for tomorrow morning." "Cabbage soup in the morning?" Sakura shuddered. She blinked after a few minutes, as her brain connected the dots. Wait, do you intend on having a hangover tomorrow? Depends on how it goes, Naruto replied cryptically once more. Want to help me with dinner, Sakura? Sure, she shrugged. Naruto would tell her within 5 minutes at most. He never did hide anything for long. As expected, after merely a few instants chopping down carrots, Naruto spoke. I'm leaving on a long-term patrol assignment tomorrow, he murmured. It will be a long 8-12-month patrol. Sakura's knife embedded deeply into the wooden board with a sick thunk. Her eyes looked towards Naruto's grimacing face, as he turned to put the fish to cook on the frying pan. Which border are you patrolling? She asked hesitantly. Iwagakure, Kusugakure and Takigakure were recaptured and have been brought into the Konoha Protectorate recently, so we now have a direct border with IWA. Who'll be going with you? Sakura asked as a heavy weight slowly settled in her stomach. My private sensei and a mix of Kusa and Taki shinobi will, so we'll be able to show a unified front. That's good, Sakura exhaled. I'll be going too, she added then. The Godame hag decided I needed a long-term mission away from you to test the boundaries of my psychological health. I'm fine, but you try and tell her that, the pink-haired Chunin snorted. I'll be patrolling the Kirigakure border, she shook her head. They assigned me an 8-12-month patrol too. What a coincidence, Naruto murmured, flipping the fish. On the other side of the elemental countries? So after tomorrow, we won't see each other for at least a year, Sakura hummed carefully. Do you know who you're going to leave the apartment to? No, but since I'm on an official mission, it will remain here by the time I come back. Good, Sakura awkwardly nodded. That's good. Oh, Sakura blushed slightly. I like it, she murmured, but isn't your house? No, her voice said frostily. I was thinking about selling it. Naruto's eyes widened briefly, before he grimaced. That's not, well, it's your choice, he spoke softly. But shouldn't you think a bit more about it? It's just painful, Sakura murmured. There are so many memories of them and, her voice trailed off. But they're precious to you, right? Naruto nudged her further. Sakura, I don't have precious memories of my parents. My childhood is as screwed up as it can become. Life dealt me a shitty hand. One so horrible a lesser me would have probably already broken, but this time it was his voice that trailed off, as he made a couple of raucous coughs. Away from the pans, of course, but I still wouldn't change it for nothing else in the world, he murmured. The times I spent with you, Saioba-sensei. The times we spent bantering or talking about things that no sane man would ever talk of. The moment we watched each other's backs and the times we trained. The time you defended me, you covered for me. All of this, he gestured around him. I wouldn't change it, ever. I live for these moments, Sakura. These moments of peace and quiet, where we can just talk in low voices without the risk of death or some dangerous enemy Nin lurking behind the corner. Nay, Naruto? Sakura smiled briefly. You know, I think Sai was right. Her voice was soft as she spoke. Why? Sakura playfully giggled. You're really a clueless harem lord. What? Sakura-chan. Naruto whined pitifully, sputtering as he spoke. Not you too, nay Naruto-kun, the pink-haired girl said between fits of giggles. Do you think we'll see each other again in a year? Yes, the boy nodded firmly. It's a promise, and you never go back on your promises, right? Sakura said then with a teasing tone in her voice. Yeah, Naruto raised an eyebrow. Well then, in a year of time, will you reply to my words? And as she softly asked that, Naruto frowned. What words was she referring to? You can't have forgotten them already. Sakura whined, bringing up her hands to the sky. Fine. She huffed with a slight pink blush on her cheeks. She took a step forward. Love. She took another, so that she stood pretty close to Naruto's frame. You, and then she kissed him on the cheek. 1 year of time, she said, tapping his lips with her finger. Promise you'll answer me in 1 year? If it was a year, maybe she'd have curves by the time it was over. And if Naruto was just an infatuation, like it had been with Sasuke, 1 year would be enough to let it be. If it wasn't, then that was another problem by itself. What did one do in a serious relationship to begin with? Naruto just stuttered and stammered, before suddenly sniffing the smell of burnt food. The fried fish was burning. Gah! The fish. And just like that, laughter filled the apartment once more. Chapter 43. The Choices in the Shadows of the Leaf. Naruto opened his eyes to the feeling of a soft form pressed against his chest. His head was slightly pounding. He knew he shouldn't have gone with the sake option in the end. His throat felt dry and parched as his vision slowly returned in definition, letting him see just who the form over him was. Sakura was sleeping over him, drooling on his shirt and with her right hand clasped to a small bottle of alcohol. He remembered having bought that bottle a few days prior. There was a moment of silence as he took in the scene of her bedazzled pink hair and her closed eyelids. He knew the alarm clock would start ringing any moment soon, and he'd better be standing up before it happened, because the alarm was in another room to begin with. Slowly, he pushed Sakura against the side of the bed as he stood up. They had taken to sleeping together during their brief sharing of the apartment. Not in that way, of course. It just felt like being on a mission, when you had to huddle closer to your teammate to survive the cold night, and it made both Sakura, who probably tied it to the burrow she had rambled about once, and Naruto, who simply liked not feeling alone, happy. He stumbled in the kitchen to grind the cabbage of the day before in the mixer. It apparently worked as something of a hangover cure, not that he believed much in it, but then again if he was going to risk his life and probably die, better to try everything than die with regrets. Sakura probably woke up after he left, as she stumbled right behind him to sit at the table's chair with no grace whatsoever. "Tea?" she grumbled half-heartedly as she crossed her arms on the table's surface and laid her head there with her face down. "Please, coming," Naruto mumbled. "Do you remember what happened last night?" "Yeah," Sakura groaned. "You're a happy drunk, and you're a sappy one. True love and whatnot," Naruto chuckled and winced a second later. He was slowly getting better by the minute, however, probably an effect of being an Uzumaki. Good to know he could pack more alcohol than other people could. His job with the mixer done, he pushed forth one of the glasses towards Sakura, who took it with her hand and made a disgusted face a moment later. "If it doesn't work," Sakura moaned, "I'm going to be angry." They both swallowed the horrifically smelling concoction at the same time, making shuddering expressions of disgust afterwards. "Had worse," Naruto mumbled before grabbing a glass of water from the tap, and doing the same with Sakura's glass. "Soldier pills taste horrible," Sakura acquiesced. "I thought worse, thanks," she added then, her hands closing once more on the glass now filled with water. "Time to prepare and then go," Naruto sighed as he cracked a few eggs on the pan. "You check the eggs?" "I can do it," Sakura nodded. "How difficult can it be?" Naruto rolled his eyes with a small smile on his lips, as he headed to his office in the apartment. He firmly closed the scrolls of the Hiraishin, the Rasengan and the 4 symbols ceiling, before carefully placing them inside his Chunin flak jacket. He couldn't trust the village not to send someone to check the apartment, and it was better to have the really important things with him. Worst case, he would have to dig a hole somewhere and bury his scrolls as fast as he could. He returned to the kitchen to the sight of scrambled eggs and pickled vegetables. Sakura had already laid the chopsticks out, and with a simple itadakimasu their last breakfast together began and finished quietly. "So?" Sakura hesitated, as she fidgeted with the plates. "I'll see you, farewell?" Naruto tried. "Goodbye," Sakura said awkwardly. Naruto exhaled. "I don't know how to do this," Sakura giggled slightly. "Neither do I," she shook her head and stared quizzically at the floor. "Sai would know. We didn't even go and watch him leave. He wouldn't have wanted that," Sakura muttered. "Well," she slapped both of her cheeks. "I'll take a shower. Then I'll dress up and go. I'll tidy around a bit more, take a shower, dress up and go too then," Naruto nodded. Good, Naruto parroted. Naruto stepped out of the house last, closing it, and holding the keys in his hands. Carefully, he placed them beneath the doormat on the outside and sighed. "Done." "Hi," Sakura murmured. "I have to be at the east gate soon." "I've got the west gate," Naruto grimaced. They looked at one another, and they stilled for a brief instant. Sakura was wearing a knee-long pair of shorts of a dark blue color, with 2 pouches per side that seemed packed with something. Her Chunin jacket was open. The dark green and blue shirt with orange stripes she wore seemed to blend with the dark green of the vest. She also had a dark brown bag on her back, extra supplies. Naruto fidgeted. He was wearing long camouflage pants of a dark brown and light gray color, and his entire shirt was uniform beige. Even the Chunin vest was the color of rocks, with spruces of dark green. Both of their forehead protectors were on their rightful position, right shoulder for Naruto and forehead for Sakura. "So?" Naruto murmured. "See you soon?" "Yeah," Sakura replied awkwardly. "Soon." They waved at one another, and then Naruto began to jump as he carefully slipped his way towards the edge of the village and to the gate. Sakura instead. She took a detour halfway through, carefully jumping down and starting to run through the narrow streets, her throat clenched and with a weight lumped inside. She stopped near a shop called Root, deep within the shinobi area of the village. She made her way inside, making an awkward nod to the clerk, an emotionless-looking man in his 20s, and then reached for the back. She pushed a loose brick to the side of the notice board, and then she unhooked from within her Chunin vest a porcelain mask. She slipped it on, carefully starting to descend the stairways that led down to where the secret training areas were of Konoha. Her sensei had proposed her, they had confirmed her, and she had accepted. Therefore, it was that on that cold November morning, Sakura Haruno began her training in Anbu. "Trainee Tora," she said with a slight crack in her voice as she stood to attention at the end of the stairways, where a giant iron door filled with bars and closed with quite an ensemble of seals was. Reporting for training duties, she would become stronger. She owed it to Naruto. Sai was trekking alongside the roads of Konoha, his paintbrush calmly stroking on the parchment as he penned a few more words. He narrowed his eyes for a moment when he watched his master, Jiraiya, look around curiously for a moment. The old Sannin then began to cackle with glee. "Can you smell it, Sai?" He sniffed for a moment the air, before replying. "Sulfur? Yes. And where there is sulfur, my apprentice, there are explosives?" Sai hazarded a guess. "Yes," Jiraiya nodded calmly. "But also," here he laughed maniacally. "Hot springs." The toad sage grabbed Sai by the shoulders. "Let's go, Sai. Let us peep to our heart's content." A slight chill settled on Sai's bones. He had some sort of feeling it wouldn't end well. If he ever related what his training consisted of, well, it was a stealth training and an information-gathering one, but it did possess a sort of penchant for making his own skill better. Master Jiraiya always wanted him to draw a few of the beauties they encountered in the most realistic ways possible, and who was he to say no? Sure, there were some disturbing noises at night after the old pervert remained alone with a real-live drawing of his, but Sai shuddered again. Some things were better left unquestioned. Naruto reached his private teacher, Yamato, who apparently has no surname, and stood to attention, letting the Jounin watch him with a critical eye. "Acceptable," Yamato muttered. "We'll be traveling towards Tanzaku quarters first, southeast of Konoha. We will then patrol around the border with the Land of Rivers first, and then Amigakure. We will meet at the old border with Kusugakure with the Protectorate Shinobi team, and from there we will move to Tenchi Bridge first, before going through the capital of Kusugakure, then the Hozuki-jo prison and Kanabi Bridge. If we follow the patrol schedule, in 8 months we will cross the old Kusataki border and start patrolling their border. Afterwards, depending on time constraints, we will return to Konoha no later than the 12th month." "Questions? Travel mode?" Naruto asked. Yamato made the hint of a smile as he answered. "High profile is permitted in the Land of Fire," which meant he could actually buy from shops with the forehead protector showing. During border patrols, a low profile, which meant faking being a civilian, and in Protectorate Border Wagakure, full battle profile. The last one meant pretty much what it entailed: consider yourself at war, and remember that if the enemy sees you, he will not hesitate to try and slice your neck piece or not. "Resupply spots expected? We have a military cache at the border with Kusa, and there is a medical and equipment cache at Tanzaku quarters," Yamato remarked with the grin still plastered on his face. 4 caches are spread throughout Kusa and Taki, and we have one hidden within the Land of Stone. It's a breach and empty, however, so don't think we'll be using it at all." "Understood," Naruto nodded firmly. "There are no more questions." "Good." Yamato gestured for him to follow, and once they were out and running through the tree branches, he unclasped a mask and launched it at Naruto, who caught it quickly. It was an Anbu mask. "You will pass off as an Anbu operative, code name." Naruto turned the mask around to watch the stylized picture. "Baku." Naruto frowned. The statue in Danzo's garden was of a tapir-like creature, but the face? It sort of did resemble the mask, didn't it? "They eat dreams, right?" Naruto asked slowly as he slowly placed the mask over his face. "And nightmares too," Yamato remarked. "Now keep quiet and adjust to the mask's feeling on your face." Silence carefully descended on the duo, interrupted only every now and then by the steps they took on the branches, and even then only from Naruto's feet. Yamato's own movement was silent every single step of the way. If it weren't for the fact he was following the Jounin, Naruto had no doubt he wouldn't have ever heard him coming. He didn't feel regret at the thought of not seeing Konoha for nearly a year. He didn't feel sadness, or anger. He just felt a twinge of sadness at the thought he wouldn't be hearing Sai's dickless remarks or Sakura's shinaro, which usually followed. There was just a dull noise in the back of his head. His tongue felt parched and dry. His eyes wavered for just a moment. The feeling of loss, it settled on him as it finally dawned that yes, he would not be seeing Sakura, or Sai, or Yugao-sensei, and that feeling it didn't go away. Naruto hadn't cried the first night he had slept out of Konoha. He had no family to return to who would miss him, and he hadn't felt lonely at all. It had actually been the opposite, with him having someone nearby to look after him and hearing them breathe. It had felt like being in a family and on outdoor camping. Now this felt different. He wasn't going camping outside, but doing business. The silence was unnerving. The Jounin was someone he didn't actually know completely, and they were going somewhere far away from the usual roads they traveled. Stop, Yamato ordered after a few hours, as the sun was settling down and the night was lurking around. They were on a thick branch, the sights of Tanzaka town actually already in front of them. We've reached Tanzaka quarters. He jumped down from the tree branch and on the road, before Naruto followed him swiftly. Naruto blinked as he realized Yamato had donned on a mask, one of a cat of all things, while he hadn't watched. I'm Nico and you're Baku. Understood? Yes, Taicho, Naruto dryly replied. Good. Create 2 Kage Bunshin. One to circle the town on the right and one on the left. Have one of them take on my appearance, and then have them both enter from the other side. They are to disperse in a back alley afterwards, understood? Yes, Taicho, Naruto swallowed as he did the hand sign. He could feel his chakra drain and leave his body, before coalescing into 2 bodies just identical to him, albeit one of the 2 sported a Nico mask. Done. All 3 droned at the same time, before 2 separated and went the direction planned. They entered through the main road, before stopping at a nearby cafe. Now, Nico spoke as he sat down, the strategy to eat without removing the mask is simple. Apply a henge? Naruto asked back, only to receive a slight nod from the other man. Precisely. Yugao-sen trained you well. No, Naruto sighed. He bit down on his tongue for a moment. It was Danzo-sensei's training. Danzo Shimura. Believing the Uchiha, he was responsible for the Kyuubi running rampant in Konoha. Believing them, he was the reason he did not have a mother or a father, and the reason why he was stuck with demons in his guts. The Hokage hadn't confirmed it yet, and the man was dead to begin with, so there was no need to try and be angry over it. He couldn't get his revenge over the dead after all. Elsewhere, in the Konoha hospital, Yui Nitogi slowly scratched her short buzz-cut blonde hair backwards, before dressing with the medical nurse outfit of Konoha, a fully white one-piece with gloves and cowl, to keep the hair out of the face. She nodded to her colleague in the hallway, before moving to where the brat was. The brat was the new genin assigned as an assistant. She too had begun working in the hospital just a few months before, a few days past the end of the Chunin exams. Then again, there weren't many jobs going on around Konoha for civilians to begin with, and being a woman also made the list shirk. A nurse, a secretary, a cashier or a waitress weren't jobs that easy to find, because mostly, it was housewives. So what if she hadn't found a man? She wasn't ugly, she knew that. She just didn't have the time with all the shifts she had to do. Her gaze went to the brat, and she sighed. Really, the way he held himself was prone to change with time. He always answered too quickly, as if eager to please and learn. She frankly detested that type of ass-kissers. They ended up the assistants of one of the doctors up in the last floors, or got the best jobs ever. Moreover, really, his surname was Sadu. He had to be an orphan. The brat with the mismatched eyes was already waiting for her as she arrived on her floor, holding on to his scrolls with whom he took notes, and what not. Well then, Niji, she said with a forced happy tone, let's begin our rounds, yes? He nodded firmly and followed her like some sort of lost puppy, albeit one with a perpetual frown, and it would have been endearing, she supposed, if not for the fact it was getting to her nerves. Nitogi-san? Niji asked carefully, I read the names of the patients we are visiting. There has to be a mistake. Why? She raised an eyebrow. What was the problem now? He hesitated. Well, someone I know who isn't supposed to be here. Maybe they got sick again, she remarked. What is the real problem? I was cast out of my clan, he muttered. I shouldn't be in any room alone with a member of my old clan. It's in the rules and, unless you are a member of the medical corps, in which case you are exempted from such regulation, she remarked dryly. You are a member of the medical corps? Yes. Then there is no problem, she shrugged. Let's go and do your cousin last kid. I'm not a kid, Niji muttered. Woman, damn proud of it, she smirked. You look just so adorable when you act like they stuck a stick up your ass, she chuckled as she watched him sputter. Now enough chit-chat. First patient of the day, Mr. Hataki. Bad case of skin irritation to his hand and groin. Niji brought both eyebrows up. Apparently made fun of Mitarashi's hand-eye coordination or something like that, she sighed. That woman is a menace. You'll find out soon that half the cases for day hospital in here are mild and due to her. Niji said nothing. He swallowed nervously only when he saw the smirking face of the nurse. Well, nothing to do about it. Let's see you examine him. They entered the patient's room with Niji already turning green, only to find the window open and the patient missing. Ah yes, Natogi exhaled. Second thing to know, brat, patient tend to escape. Being shinobi as they are too tough to waste time for some mild bruises, never mind the fact they could be infected or not. Depending on their rank, feel free to strap them down. Well, next patient then. Niji thanked Kami wholeheartedly. There would come a day where he would have to deal with examining a man's groin, but it would not be that day. Orochimaru calmly looked at the map of the elemental countries, his gaze moving from the land of fire to the land of stone, before moving towards that of lightning and that of wind. He ignored the land of water, since whatever use that dirty ensemble of islands had was already gone. He calmly tapped his fingers on the map for a moment more, before slowly coming to a decision. He abruptly stood up, his eyes briefly moving erratically on his face. Indeed, he nodded. That would work perfectly, he muttered as he snapped his fingers. Hebe crawled back on her feet tiredly. She made a horrible chair, and breathed slowly. She couldn't show pain. It wasn't permitted. Now Hebe, the girl trembled. Let's see if you're smart enough, which meant if you aren't, I'll hit you. And if you aren't smarter than yesterday, I'll hit you more. He carefully grabbed a few chess pieces from a nearby box, and settled them gently on the map. This here is Konoha. It dropped the chess piece of a horse on the village. Each piece is an army worth of shinobi. Konoha has one army, and 2 more pieces. Those are the other 2 Sannin. He placed 2 more horses on the land of fire, uncaring that they actually weren't the same color. Then, since I'm feeling generous, I give them 1 more horse even though their Jinchuriki is a pitiful excuse. To think I actually spared his life once, he shook his head. He has still to make do with his own promise, but we'll see, he muttered to himself. He grabbed the rooks next. Now we've got us, the superior army. We've got a nice and big city, which is worth 2 armies, because it's the city and myself. We've got the Reibi, which is another army. We have Otogekyu's proud shinobi, and that's yet 1 more army. So you see, we're already equal, right? Hebe nodded slowly. She was rewarded with a knee to the stomach that sent her on the ground barfing. Wrong. Orochimaru snarled. Come on, Anko, you can't be that stupid. Do you want to go back to cleaning the poisoned kunai? She trembled and shook her head fiercely. No, Orochimaru-sama, please, I'll do better. Very well, Orochimaru nodded. And now we have a problem here. We are cooperating with Akatsuki, and we wear their cloaks, but we aren't sharing their objectives. I mean, really? Create a super weapon that will force the shinobi world through pain to stop wars is stupid. Orochimaru snorted. My mean is far better. He nodded to himself. Complete extermination, he smiled to himself. Except for a selected few, of course, he chuckled. And then we will start a new order afterwards. Smart plan, isn't it? Hebe swallowed as she nodded hastily. Good. He patted her on the head. You see that you're smart when you want to be? Now, how can we get complete annihilation? First of all, we need to move Konoha's armies somewhere, like patrolling protectorate states. He carefully moved 2 horses towards Kusa and Taki, and then make sure 1 more is busy with a non-existing trouble. He moved the 3rd one towards Kiri. Finally, when all is said and done, we make sure some other countries, here he dropped a few pawns on Kumo, Suna and Iwa, are willing to partake in trade, and then, he dropped a pawn in Demon Country. We ensure an attack happens from someplace unexpected, Orochimaru murmured. But that alone would not be enough. It would end with only Konoha destroyed and only the land of fire ravaged. It's not good. Not good at all. Which is why we're letting the Kages meet in the land of iron, Orochimaru smiled. And you know what will happen while they're talking about taking us down together? As he asked that, Hebe took a deep breath. She had no idea, but maybe she could fake it well enough? They will fight one another? How? By making something look like the fault of someone else? She closed her eyes and brought her arms up in fear for a hit. No hit came, and so she lowered her arms. Exactly, Orochimaru smirked. I'll be going to Sunagakure. No, we'll be going, he corrected himself. And I will replace their Kazakage, he laughed lightly. I just know he's dying from the desire to meet me again. The snake Sannin hummed a little tune. And then I will go to the meeting in his place. I'll make a mess to make sure Orochimaru appears the culprit, he sing-sung, and then I'll reveal just what good old Iwagakure asked of the land of demons, and for what purpose. That should be enough to enrage the land of lightning. His eyes grew cold. And then I will personally take Hanzaki's head for being an inferior cowardly being who dared betray my superior self, he laughed aloud. Isn't that pure genius, my little Anko? He grabbed the girl by the sides and lifted her up, laughing as he made her spin. They'll kill each other over truths best kept hidden. And then, when the dust will settle, they will realize all too late of Akatsuki's army who would then wipe them all out. Here Orochimaru frowned. But then, how do we wipe out Akatsuki's army then? He held Hibi close as if he was consoling a crying baby, going as far as patting her on the back. She was outright scared, especially because every now and then the Sannin would sniff her hair or lick her sweat off her temple. We make them reveal themselves early? Good enough, Orochimaru sighed. Not perfect, but it's good enough I suppose for a first try. He dropped her on the ground without a second glance. She barely managed to fall on her hands, that she felt a sharp pain stab her on the sides of her ribs, sending her to fly in the air as blood pooled in her mouth. She crashed against the side of the wall in agony, her eyes half closed from the nerve-wracking ache. When I ask you a question, Hibi, I want a complete answer. Understood? He hissed. Why yes, Orochimaru-sama, she coughed out as blood splattered on the ground. Ugh, that's my favorite floor. Orochimaru rolled his eyes. Anyway, you forgot to count in the land of claws and the land of fangs, which is bad, especially if you want to become a smart thinker like me. The snake sage shook his head. Horrible, really, Orokim, Aru-sama? Now, no need to be that pitiful. I just cracked a few of your ribs. Nothing you can't survive. Remember, pain is a temporary state of flesh. Ignore it, and it will be as if it never existed in the first place. Orochimaru spoke calmly, before turning to leave. You would do better to move and follow me, Hibi. I hate people who can't follow, and Hibi gritted her teeth as she slowly stood, holding on to her sides that pained her terribly. She took a step forward, before seeing dots of black in her vision, and stumbling down on one knee again. Please, Orochimaru-sama, Orochimaru sighed. You'll go without dinner then, and then the Sannin left. He left her there, to fall on the ground and faint from the pain. He left her there, probably, to die, like a discarded toy, that had broken. She felt so tired. Tanzaka Quarters had quite a selection of places to rest for shinobi. Naruto realized that as he slowly came to terms with the fact that being an Anbu, or faking being one, came with quite a bit of a discount on nearly everything. He hadn't brought much money with him, but apparently that was something every Anbu did. Rather, they had a direct check link with Konoha's bank, and the bank itself paid the expenses of the shinobi staying outside the village, of Jounin rank and above only, of course. The cost incurred reduced the pay, unless they directly related to completing the mission faster, in which case, the village itself paid for said expenses. In this case, the pay for the long-term patrol mission was from the 80,000 rios, if they took only 8 months, to the 120 rios and above, depending if it lasted 1 year, if there were hostile encounters or if something else happened that placed the shinobi at risk. Long-term patrols would be ranks by themselves, while short-range or short-term patrols were C ranks. They spent the night and had a hot spring, and a few of the Masuzes were watching them with the sort of sultry look you can expect from a cat about to devour a fish. Shinobi probably made up a good chunk of their earnings after all. Naruto exhaled in relief as he slowly slid in the water of the hot spring. He had a kunai hidden within his bath towel, just as he was sure the Jounin that was guiding him had too. They both wore the Anbu mask. They even let them enter the springs with those on, and held a sort of quiet and serious air as they looked at one another. I enjoy eating walnuts, he said then. Naruto's eyes widened when he heard the Jounin say those words, because it absolutely made no sense at all with the mood. Well, considering he was wearing a mask and a bath towel in a hot spring, and judging by how serious the travel time had been. I like ramen? Naruto said with a nervous chuckle. I dislike oily foods, they just taste wrong. I'm sure it's a matter of the oil used by the cook, Naruto replied. Although, sometimes it happens they overuse the oil. There was another minute of uncomfortable silence. My hobby is architecture. Naruto blinked and hesitated for a moment. I like gardening, he softly said. Oh, plants don't judge, Naruto shrugged. Is this downtime talk? Indeed. Bonds of trust are crucial to the inner works of any Anbu operative team, Yamato remarked. Normally, you would be training within Konoha, but since it is crucial you are kept on the move as much as possible, I was assigned as your personal instructor. Why? Imagine a powerful explosive tag. If you know where it is, you can start to plan how to disarm it, how to avoid it, but if you don't know where it is going, the difficulty to plan a proper counterattack increases. Wouldn't it be better to hold me in Konoha, however? Naruto replied. I mean, if we're, then why shouldn't I be kept in Konoha? Because the enemy possesses a long-range kunai with an explosive tag attached to it so powerful, it can pretty much wipe out the village. Naruto swallowed heavily. And why doesn't he use it then? Because a field of grain is worth more than one of ashes, Yamato answered. That's obvious. Isn't he a madman? Should he actually be thinking that far? Yamato exhaled slowly. Orochimaru, of the Sannin, I suppose nobody fully told you his exploits, isn't that right? Naruto said nothing, but simply nodded. Imagine graduating at 6 years from the academy, to be thrust in the war. Imagine having the kami of shinobi, the Sandaime, as your teacher. That alone would make you a good shinobi, an excellent one. That would make you a Sannin like he later became, but it wouldn't be enough to make you such a feared person. Yamato sighed. The difference between him and, let's say, the Godaime, the difference between him and the Yandaime, or him and any other S-rank shinobi is that he incarnates the truth of the shinobi world. He has done things so terrible in his time both as a jounin and as an Anbu, but especially, he is one of the main reason peace was kept in the shinobi lands for so long. What? That's above your rank, Baku, Yamato replied. Just know that if Orochimaru had not turned mad, he would have probably been the Yandaime Hokage, but the Sandaime feared him, because he feared the truth of the Nindo. The snake Sannin had no trouble killing his heart for the benefit of the village. He had no trouble killing his emotions for his own benefit. He was so good at that he simply decided to let his heart rot one day, and stopped caring about bringing it back. Everything he did, everything he ever did, he will tell you he did for Konoha. And the problem? Yamato brought both of his arms to cross over his chest. The problem is that he would not be lying on that. Did you meet him in person? Naruto suddenly asked, curiosity taking the better of him. Yes, Yamato stiffly answered. I was with my genin team, on my first C rank out of the village. He killed all of them in front of me, and told me I was too weak to ever be more than a failure. His voice was filled with disdain as he spoke. Yamato growled as he clenched his right hand into a fist. But enough of this, what about you? I read your information scroll. The stunt you pulled in the hospital would have landed any other shinobi on the death row, but the fact you actually managed to quick think your way through. How did you even escape the Anbu? I'm good at running from Anbu, Naruto mumbled. I did that all the time when I was young. No, Yamato shook his head. The Anbu simply stopped following you, and Anbu has better things to do than follow a boy through Konoha. Sure, they could have caught you immediately, but letting you run was probably a way to tire you out and make it easier for the rest to go about their daily business. Naruto grumbled something unintelligible and lowered half of his face in the water together with the mask. How did you escape? Yamato pressed forth once more. Summoning technique, Naruto finally muttered. Jiraiya-sama taught you that? I see, Yamato nodded. It is a common mean to escape enemies for those lucky enough to have been accepted as contract holders. The animals can summon their summoner back after all. It's toads, right? Yeah, Naruto grabbed on to the lie quickly. Them. That's good to know, Yamato said. Are there any other skills I should know of? Naruto closed his eyes as he thought about it. What else could he do? He couldn't actually summon toads, but if he tried and was lucky enough, maybe he'd have the same affinity as them? Or what if he ended up with the same summons as Danzo-sensei? Or maybe something else. But what was there if not toads? Maybe, what if he had dragons as summons? The thought actually made Naruto stop for a moment to breathe and calm down. There was no way dragons existed. Who was he kidding? He just hoped he didn't end up with slugs or, kami forbid, snakes. Still, the problem was worse than that. What if the man asked him to demonstrate? Naruto would have no choice. He'd have to, and then the man would know he was lying. What was worse was the fact that then he'd ask why, and the answer would be that he was covering for the two Uchiha, both probably missing Nins. He would have kicked himself, but as it was, he was already in hot waters. No pun intended, considering he actually was in the hot springs. Now, while we are in the springs, Yamato said suddenly, interrupting Naruto's train of thoughts. We will train with the water release. Have you managed to change your chakra to water? Naruto swallowed nervously. I'm afraid not, he shook his head. It's easier for me to grind the chakra in my body than let it drip or whatever. Yamato nodded. There is nothing to worry about. It's normal, and it normally takes years. We will be using Kage Bunshin for it after all. Create 3 of your copies. It was then that Naruto mentally kicked himself in the head. Of course. He didn't have to go by himself to get his summons. He could send his Kage Bunshin. They would then dispel and there would be nothing to worry about, especially because they couldn't bleed, so they couldn't sign contracts. And if it turned out he had a contract with something different than the toads, then he simply wouldn't sign it, and wait for the toad sage to come around again. Yes. He could do that. He grinned to himself as he created the kage bunshin required by his sensei. Instead of creating 3, however, he made 5. Ops, he muttered. I still have to get the hang of making fewer of them. Yamato raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Never mind, send those 2 outside to guard us while we train. Naruto sheepishly nodded, letting the 2 clones leave. The next instant, he was rewarded with a satisfying pop as the 2 clones disappeared. He supposed everything would be fine. What was the worst that could happen? Naruto Uzumaki, clone number 4, was perplexed. He knew perfectly well he was nothing more than a mass of chakra coalesced together by hand signs, and he knew he wasn't supposed to feel much more or last more than a few minutes, or hours, depending on the training method, but he still could do nothing but stare with shock at what stood in front of him. He was staring at an overweight tapir covered in gold. The thing had golden rings over his long prehensile nose, and tiger-like limbs. He looked as if someone had thought it funny to mix a broad-chinned animal to a strange furred body. Naruto had thus no words to describe the thing. It did sort of resemble the statue in the garden of Danzo-sensei. He swallowed nervously as he watched the thing's giant prehensile nose come down to sniff at him, before make a face of disgust. I admire your cautiousness, the thing remarked. And I approve of your mask, a Baku, is it not? The creature smiled, showing a pointed set of teeth, the creature that looked eerily like his mask. We do not have a summoner, the Baku spoke next. He died, apparently, the thing spoke. His dreams did not reach us. Do you have dreams, would-be summoner? I want to be Hokage. A tiny voice squeaked next to him. He spun around with his eyes wide. He watched his younger self smile and puff his chest out. He remembered that moment. The Chunin-sensei had asked them their dreams, and he had answered without thinking twice. Dreams of childhood, the Baku spoke fondly. They can never be forged stronger than that. The children's dreams, they are the most precious and delicious to eat on. The scenery changed around Naruto, to show the dark apartment he had held once, and a figure clad in darkness walking in, kunai in hand. Just like their nightmares. There was a flash of light, and the figure clutching the kunai appeared to Naruto, who held his breath in his throat. Orochimaru of the Sannin was looking at him with a bored look, twirling the kunai in his hand and with his golden eyes spiraling like those of a snake. The child Naruto screamed something unintelligible, soon followed by laughter from the other Sannin. There was a bit of speaking he didn't catch, and then the Sannin was gone. What is that? Naruto murmured. Your nightmare, the Baku commented. If you wish of us as your summons, you must agree to 3 things. The creature slowly stood up from its throne made of bones. Hadn't it been gold a moment earlier? First, you will give unto me your childhood dreams. The creature took a step forward. Then your childhood nightmares. He stopped straight in front of Naruto, the prehensile nose hovering above the boy's head. The creature was humongous. It easily rivaled a building 4 floors high. And finally, you will understand that to call me forth, the chief of the Baku, of the Eaters of Dreams and Nightmares, you will sacrifice your dreams, your nightmares, all of them, to me. Naruto swallowed, and then he nodded. Very well, the ruler of the Baku said. My name is Akumu, my daughters are Neru and Yum, and my sons are Makura and Kaba. He slowly brought a scroll from the pile of gold that he used as a throne. Weren't those bones a moment before? And he dropped it open in front of him. Written above the empty space was Danzo Shimura's name, and beneath it a dotted line was the spot reserved for the new summoner. Write your name in blood, the Baku muttered, pushing the scroll onto him. Once you have done so, summon one of my children to bring the scroll back. Now go, and return to your original. The clone of Naruto blinked as he felt the prehensile nose of the Baku descend on him. He felt a strange tugging as his body seemingly felt snapped in half, before he reappeared outside the hot springs room. He held on to the summoning scroll as he left the establishment quickly, as a Kage Bunshin clothes could be conjured with chakra after all. He'd wait for the original to pop out and deliver the scroll to him afterwards. There was no hurry, he supposed. He didn't even feel strange. Had the Baku really eaten his dreams and his nightmares? He frowned and shrugged. His dream had always been to protect his teammates. What was wrong with that? He sat down on a nearby rooftop and stood in wait. It was then that he frowned and realized something. He was missing the other clone. The other clone of Naruto Uzumaki, number 5, wasn't perplexed. He was scared shitless. He stood surrounded by giant eyes and pointy beaks, as feathers floated in the air all around him. He looks too broody for us cranes, a pink-colored bird said with a huffing noise. I'll pass on him. I don't think he likes fish, a pelican said then. He doesn't seem like a hearty eater. Does he like to lay eggs? A chicken asked, turning her head around while doing the cockode sound. No, he doesn't look like he likes to lay eggs. There was a squawk and a ruffle of feathers as an egg popped out of the giant chicken's rear. I have a deal with the Uchiha clan, an old crow with a scar over his right eye commented. He had a straw hat to cover half of his head, and held a rusty tanto to his side. He is from Konoha, but I have a deal and we crows honor our deals. There were a few indignant squawks all around for a bit more, before someone hazarded. What about asking the bats? Those things aren't birds, you goose, the crow muttered back at a giant goose. He doesn't seem like he likes to sing. A songbird thrilled. Maybe he likes to swim? A duck quacked, flapping her wings. Naruto shook his head quickly. Too unrefined, a swan exhaled. And let's face it, the giant white bird turned its long and lithe neck around. We're missing someone. A peacock looked around for a moment. Indeed, As a gust of air scared the animal, it opened its giant back fan of green feathers with blue eye-like drawings, sending a veritable hurricane of air and feathers to scatter around, forcing clone number 5 to bring his arms up to cover his face. So, this guy is it? A woodpecker said excitedly, flying around quickly and looking at each other. Nobody wants him, right? So I can have him, yes? Yes? Ahem. There was a polite cough from a corner of the wide open space the birds were discussing in. I have yet to stake my claim. A figure wobbled down from its perch, slowly walking forward and letting its neck rise above the others. The rest of the birds shirked slightly backwards. The vulture looked down at Naruto and raised an eyebrow. His jet-black feathers looked like polished alabaster, and their white tips showed signs of his old age. He had a curved beak, and his dark eyes seemed to be analyzing every single bit of flesh Naruto had on his body. I will take him, the vulture nodded. You know you can't eat him, right? The crows said carefully. Of course I don't want to eat him, the vulture scoffed back. I wouldn't even if I wanted to, it's a Kage Bunshin. The vulture shook his head. Youngsters these days, they can't even recognize a Bunshin when they see one. The vulture slowly looked at Naruto's eyes once more. You have tasted the flesh of your kind, have you not? The beak curved into a smile. You gorged upon their flesh, and snapped their entrails from their bodies. Naruto swallowed, and then grimly nodded. You are thus perfect. The vulture flapped its wings. Wonderful circumstances, marvelous randomness, he is now ours, of the vulture clan. The rest of the birds in the flock made a few more steps backwards. A few even whispered among themselves, are we sure he isn't going to eat him? Let's hope so. Carry this scroll back to your true self, to he who gorges on the flesh of the dead. The vulture clicked its tongue against his beak. Tell him that the carrion eaters shall answer his call in exchange for the flesh of the deceased. We shall feast upon the rotten bodies that cover the earth together, and banquet upon their putrescent corpses. The vulture's wings opened wide. My name is Hagewashi. Remember it, for upon my black wings you will call to complete the deal with us. There was a gust of wind as the vulture flung a scroll covered in black feathers towards the clone, which caught it by reflex as a tornado of black plumes covered him. When his sight returned, he stared at the surprised clone number 4, who was holding a scroll too. Now how do we explain this to the boss? They both said at the same time, grimacing. Then, they had an idea. They both created a clone. The clones looked at one another with a knowing look, and then destroyed the 2 older clones. The knowledge of what happened, it forced Naruto, who had been trying to get the water release to work, to suddenly still as the knowledge and thoughts conflicted one against the other, bringing him to fall backwards and slip as his other clones dispelled altogether. His body twitched and he convulsed as Yamato brought him out of the hot springs and lowered him on the stone floor. Naruto coughed and barked as he closed his eyes and exhaled a heavy breath. The next moment, he laughed. Chapter 44. The Wicked Truth Behind the Mask. This chapter is extremely dark. Beware. Yamato did not know what to make of the young Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. One moment, his gaze was serious and his facade perfect. The next, he cracked down and laughed. He didn't like mysteries. He was Anbu. His purpose was to complete the mission assigned to him, and nothing more. The way the boy had excused himself and gone to bed had made him wary. But then again, it wasn't as if he hadn't left a Bunshin to check on the brat. The Mokuton Bunshin outside the door remained quietly hidden in the shadows, as it watched one of the masseuses from below come up. He hadn't thought the kid would be hormonal enough to buy a prostitute. Then again, the boy was a Jinchuriki. He probably had grown out faster than his peers had. The woman giggled all the way upstairs, before entering the room and closing it behind her. He was an Anbu rank jounin of Konoha, and thus there was no way Yamato could feel embarrassment at hearing the boy or the woman engage in sexual acts. He did place earplugs when he heard them moan though. because he really didn't want to have a woody on his woodbunshin. Once the prostitute was done, he quietly remained there for a moment more, just the time to hear the boy's soft snoring, before sighing. He had been a quick sport, thankfully. The prostitute smiled as she reached the floor below, letting the henge slowly disperse. The Kagebunshin held in its hands an inkpot filled with blood, more than enough to write down his name on the scrolls. He didn't know if there was a law against signing one of them, but the Baku had already taken their payment, so there was no use in dilly-dallying around them. The Kagebunshin reached the rooftop where he had hidden the 2 scrolls, and slowly unclasped them both. He wrote down his name with his blood, before dipping his finger in the inkpot, and using his chakra to summon the first one, Yum, carefully hiding the other scroll. A small tapir-like Baku appeared, her size no larger than a cat. Her fur had streaks of blue and purple, and she seemed to nozzle affectionately the scroll. "Well, you go back to your father now, right?" The Baku made him a sound as it disappeared, a sort of mixture between a meow and a small strange verse. Sighing in relief, he repeated the process with the second. Hagewashi appeared with its wings wide open, letting his dark pitch-black feathers spread around them as if to create a sort of shower of darkness. Its long beak stood in a curve that probably was a smile for the avian, as it slowly draped one of its long wings across Naruto's shoulder. "Smarter than you look, stronger than you look, your skills will benefit us, we know," the vulture nodded. "We are the vultures, the hawks, the eagles. We are the condors and the carrion crows. We feast upon our kin and our enemies, for in death all are equal food to us. Our young will feast on the flesh of our dead, and the weak shall become the strength of the strong." The vulture laughed dryly, as it rasped and coughed halfway through his laughter in the midst of the night. "Let us fly tonight, youngling." He brought down his wing in front of him, and then revealed the freedom of wings to your original self. Naruto wasn't feeling guilty about having called upstairs a masseuse from the floor below. She had actually been a decent sort, and had agreed to play a prank on his colleague. Since the money would be siphoned out of his mission pay, there really wasn't much of a problem. He actually felt smug about how he had planned to let her leave. A few hours later, which had passed playing a few card games with the geisha in question in silence, and his clone returned hinged as the masseuse once more. He cheerfully nodded to the geisha, who smiled coyly before ruffling her kimono and leaving a quarter of an hour later. His clone dispelled a moment after, and as Naruto fell with his back on the ground, he sported a sort of lazy and ecstatic smirk on his face that bordered the smugness. Flying was awesome. The next morning, Yamato kept eyeing him through his mask with a sort of knowing look, and a bit of pride. "Well," the Jounin spoke as he stood atop a rooftop. "What you lack in endurance you make up with multiple shots, right? Eh?" "Yes," Yamato nodded calmly. "It never happened," he finally mumbled. "Please refrain from doing this every night." "You understood," Naruto nodded. He inwardly thanked the Anbu mask. Without his face showing, there was no way the man could detect him hiding something. "Now, we will spend 1 month in Tanzaka quarters and their surroundings scouting for possible troubles. Using your Kagebunshin, have 2 of them move through the crowd henge to appear civilians. We will take care of patrolling the outskirts in a star-like pattern. Just follow my lead for the first few days, and then I can begin showing you the tricks for identifying potential spies." Naruto cocked his head to the side for a moment, before shrugging. It sounded boring, but then again, patrols were supposed to be boring, weren't they? The month spent circling Tanzaka quarters was one of the most boring months ever to be done, with nothing short of a few scuffles between drunkards at night to spice it up. In the end, Naruto was actually glad when they moved to their next objective, the border with the land of rivers and the contested gold mine territory. There was a feeling of dread soaking through Naruto's bones as they reached the Katabami Kinzen area, where a village of the nearly insane named gold mine was. They were just at the border with the land of fire, but the land of rivers had control over the gold mine due to some old treaty. The thick silence that descended as they carefully prowled in the night towards the village made Naruto's throat parched. His sensei wasn't saying a word more than was needed. Naruto remained silent as he softened as much as he could his steps on the dry ground. He could smell the fumes of burning coal in the air. The smelters were still working, and the light sprinkles of coal dust that covered nearly every building made Naruto wince. He could hear the grumbling noises of the workers either returning from work or entering their houses, covered in soot and sweaty. He could smell them from a mile away. All that it would take would be a simple fire, and everything would go up in flames. Yamato Taishu slowly crawled past the village, as the night kept on creeping over them, shrouding them in the darkness. Silently, he gestured for him to break and enter a house. Naruto swallowed and stood to the side of the window of the wooden construction in question. He saw a normal-looking family of 3 eating their dinner while making their normal banter. The husband was a thick and muscle-filled miner who had just returned, while covered in dust. The wife was a plump woman, not beautiful or anything like that. The boy was barely 5 years old. There was nothing of interest next to the house, except for a large pit used to drop the organic waste. Naruto looked back at his Taicho, who pointed at the family and made the same unmistakable gesture once more. The land of rivers wasn't an ally of Konoha, but neither were they enemies. This house was the last one of the village. There was no reason to kill them, none that he could think of. He grabbed his Yoroi Tanto and nervously looked once more at them. He could hear his heartbeat in his chest, and he knew he had to do as his sensei asked. He clenched the Tanto firmly. He palmed a kunai with his other hand. Carefully, with the use of wind chakra, he sliced the window's frame quietly. Then, as fast as he could, he jumped in. The kunai flew to the throat of the man, while his Yoroi Tanto pushed deeply into the woman's spine as Naruto spun in midair to land a kick to the child's temple. With a sickening crunch of broken bones, the child fell on the ground as the woman collapsed with her eyes wide in horror and her mouth oozing saliva and blood. The man gurgled, trying to hold on to the kunai that had struck him in the neck. Naruto slowly let his emotions die as he jumped forward and landed a swipe of the Tanto at the man's neck, decapitating him deftly. Behind him, he saw Yamato enter and use Mokutan to recluse the window frame before pulling the dingy dust-soaked curtains to cover them from the outside. The smell of blood in the room was sickening. "Baku," Yamato muttered. "You could have done better," he said without a single inflection of emotion in his voice. Breaking and entering is important for Anbu, fighting in close quarters within houses even more. Naruto didn't trust his voice to not be cracked. He just numbly nodded as he watched his Taicho bring all the corpses boringly in a corner, before using the Mokutan to hide them beneath the ground. "We have all the night to make you better," Yamato remarked. First of all, he slowly unhooked a thin metallic wire. Normal windows are closed with hooks, which can easily be pulled up from the outside with a thin wire. If that fails, you can quietly tap the window, and when someone goes to look and opens it, you can pierce their head from the outside and then enter. If even that fails, normally it is better to slice only on one side of the window frame, to take out the hinges. Breaking glass is the worst possible solution, unless you are literally on a time constraint, in which case any method applies. Naruto's eyes were still fixed on the spot where the glazed-over eyes of the kid of barely 5 was buried. That pale face and open eyes, he hadn't even had the time to scream. He was trembling, slightly. This was different from killing an enemy shinobi. Slaughtering civilians wasn't something he believed Konoha would ever do. Then again, the slander of Iwagakure depicted their shinobi as beasts armed with nothing more but a desire to harm others, going as far as gutting children and leaving the villages across the borders too. Naruto's eyes widened briefly. "We're pinning the blame on IWA for this, right?" he whispered as his breath stilled in his throat. "And moving in to protect the town," Yamato remarked. "And making sure the country of rivers isn't allied with Orochimaru, and many more nuances that you are not of appropriate rank to know." Naruto shook his head slowly. "We're no better than murderers if we do this. We are Anbu," Yamato hissed as he grabbed Naruto by the shoulders. "We serve the Hokage and Konoha. Our lives are forfeit for them. We act in the shadows. We do unspeakable things for our village. Never forget that, Baku. Now, proceed on to the next house. Do not start fires. Do not let anyone escape." Naruto shook his head. I can't," he croaked. "You can't ask me to, the kids. I am not asking you, Baku," the man's voice was harsh. "I am ordering you. This is an A-rank mission, multiple assassinations. Do you really think patrols are only made of boring stuff?" Naruto swallowed. Then, half of the patrols are short-range only, for the Chunin to get the hang of the outside. Long-range or long-term patrols are generally code for Anbu operatives executing their missions. Bile rose to Naruto's throat. "As Sakura. I do not know of such a name in Anbu," Yamato quipped. "If she was assigned a mask, and if she was sent on a long-range mission, then it is probable her loyalty to Konoha will be verified in the same way." "It's always about loyalty, isn't it?" Naruto murmured. "Prove yourself loyal, and you get money and techniques. Prove that you value the village, and your life will be better." "Yes," Yamato answered bluntly. "No sacrifices should be done without a prize at the end." "So it's about money?" "No," Naruto shook his head. "It's about something more than money. There are no excuses for this. These actions, I can't believe the village would." "We are not the only one who does," Yamato replied. "If you think Konoha different than the rest, or the other villages different from Konoha, Then you are wrong. The malice deeply rooted within the leaf, Naruto whispered. I see. I think I understand it better. Nothing, he shook his head. He clenched both of his fists tightly. I'll do it. He exhaled. He felt his shoulders heavy and his heart constrict, as if he had just signed a deal with the devil. I just have to kill my heart, right? Yamato cocked his head to the side. Indeed. Consider your opponents as mere objectives, targets. Think of them as cattle if you prefer. They are not human. They have no worth. They are people you despise and hate. I know of someone who thought of his assassination targets as watermelons. Think something funny or bizarre and it will help you repress your feelings. So this is a test of loyalty, Naruto chuckled grimly. I get it. The entire village? Down to the last children, Yamato nodded. The Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi closed his eyes, his breathing slowing as he calmed his heart. They were targets. He was a shinobi. This was his duty. This was for the benefit of Konoha. This was for the village. This was for his teammates. This was for himself last. He tightened the hold on the kunai and the tanto. He slowly crouched in the shadows and left from the window. Yamato nodded to himself in approval, before disappearing to observe from a better position the boy's actions. He watched him quietly enter a house. He barely heard the sound of scuffling ensue before silence reigned and the fire turned off. Light after light, the houses of the miners near the gold mine died, quietly and silently. With the gentle breeze of the night picking up after a few moments, Yamato watched with cold and uncaring eyes Naruto move and execute the villagers. The boy was a natural, or maybe his training had made him such a prodigy. Normally, Anbu were chosen from battle-hardened chunin, and generally their first mission always involved something shady, on the dark gray scale of morality for the village. If an Anbu could assassinate the child of a minor lord of the capital of the Land of Fire, then he could easily plant explosive near a civilian village of the Land of Stone, and create a landslide. It was as the last light of the last house made of wood and clay died out that Yamato slowly jumped down from his observation post to watch how Naruto had taken to the mission. The boy was cradling a newborn with both of his arms, tears streaking down his chin as his mask hid his crying eyes. He shook his head, and then grabbed the kunai from his pouch and slowly lowered the bundle on the ground. The child wept, the single noise echoing through the now eerily silent village. It was the cry of an innocent infant, born barely a few months before. His cries joined with the sobs of Naruto, as the chunin of Konohagakure no Sato lowered his kunai as fast as he could. The cry died out immediately, snuffed out. Naruto left the last house wobbling on his feet, holding his hand against the wall as he slowly slid his back against the wooden house and fell down on the coal dust-filled settlement's road. It's done, he croaked out, his Yoroi Toshi Tanto crimson with blood. The boy bitterly laughed as he recalled the words of Shimura Danzo, months before, or maybe even years. It felt so distant, so far away then. The handle was dark blue when I first wielded it. It became dark purple from the blood of Konoha's enemies that dripped onto it. Naruto wondered as he looked at the sword dribbling blood from the blade to his hand, how much blood had belonged to the enemies of Konoha, and how much to the innocents caught in between the fights of the villages. Was there even an excuse for killing children? Was there a reason to slice the throats of a newly born baby? Naruto couldn't find one. He couldn't find a single defining reason for it, but he had done it all the same. He eyed his Taicho start going through handsteels, before slamming both of his hands on the ground and creating a ripple on the rocks. Spikes erupted, tearing apart the buildings made of wood and letting them crash down one after the other, while leaving the smelter area relatively safe. He used more earth techniques then, as meticulously and without a moment of hesitation, the Anbu mercilessly tore with Doton Jutsu the corpses and their surroundings. Naruto slowly stood back up, grabbing the small slip of cloth that he used to clean his Yoroi Tanto, and then he proceeded to do just that, in silence. The blood would never wash away, would it? Suddenly Yamato tensed. Baku, hide! With a quick decision, Naruto did just that. He hid behind a jagged rocky edge that hadn't been in the village before, but had been created by Yamato's technique. A group of figures stalked down from the cobblestone road slightly above the village, cloaks floating behind their backs as they had strange metal claws on their hands. They weren't sporting forehead protectors, but they were quite an organized group of 5. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he smelled their scents coming from the wind. There was some sort of spicy aftertaste. Had they been eating curry? What the hell happened here? One of the group exclaimed. Man, what a mess. Was it an avalanche or something like that? I don't think avalanches are supposed to make spikes, another of the group remarked. It looks like some sort of crazy ninja stuff. Shit, you think there are any survivors around here? Man, should we look for some gold? Aye, guys, are we sure we should be staying here? The bandit that strongly smelled of curry asked warily. I don't like this. You know the boss wanted someone to bury Karasher. We can't go back empty-handed. Yeah, maybe he can make do with one of the miners who overworked, one of the brigands remarked. Think he'll accept that? Sure he will. You know how the boss is, another muttered. There was a general nod from the group, and as quickly as they had arrived they left. Naruto remained down, crouched and hidden by the shadows for a moment more, before he felt Yamato's presence near him. Now, the masked Anbu muttered. This is the second part of the deal. Taicho? Need to know basis, Baku, the Taicho remarked. You have proven your loyalty in the first part of the mission, and now it is time for the second part. He nodded grimly. Yes, Taicho, we have received communication that Raiga Kurasuki, an Anbu missing nin from Kirigakure, has delved into this area harassing the population. He has escaped Kiri wielding the Kiba, the twin swords of lightning. We are to recover the swords, blame the massacre on him or a Wagakure shinobi, and eliminate all members of the Kurasuki family. Yamato then looked in the direction the group of 5 had gone. We will also ensure the few survivors in the mines confirm our version of the tale. Naruto swallowed the lump that had begun to rise once more from his stomach. Lies and deceits. Lies and deceits. He was a shinobi and the world was filled with lies and deceits. Maybe, if he kept repeating to himself that, he wouldn't feel guilty anymore. The child had been so soft in his hands. He had looked at him with his wide brown eyes, and then he had done it all the same. He had killed him in cold blood. How were they different from Orochimaru? How was any of what they were doing different from the snake sage? How? The corpses. They would rot, wouldn't they? He silently followed Yamato without thinking much about it. But even as he tried to forget, even as he tried to leave it behind, how much blood was there in a baby? Too much. He had to do this. If not for himself, then for Sai and Sakura. He couldn't care less about the village, but if he ran, then what of them? Would they die to be his punishment? No, the Hokage had said, she had told him, she wouldn't, but what if she had lied? He couldn't believe that. She had seemed honest, seemed sincere, seemed. He couldn't know, and he couldn't know because he had no way to prove it. If only he could listen to their thoughts, to the thoughts birthed of malice itself. He was stopped by Yamato's hand and firmly pushed down on the ground. He had kept on running way past the point considered safe to spy upon an enemy shinobi, but thankfully his Taicho had stopped him. He fell on the ground in silence, and kept his face pressed against the inward side of the mask of the Baku. He wasn't Naruto, but Baku, if he believed that, he was Baku. He wasn't Naruto. Naruto would never kill a child. He wasn't a monster. He wasn't a demon. Baku would, but Naruto wouldn't. Yes, he could work with that. Baku was his scapegoat. Some small part of him knew it had been Naruto to drive home the kunai. Some tiny part that was quickly squashed and tucked away told him it had been him to do so. That tiny part died away and its corpse hid deeply in the confines of his soul. Baku, Nico hissed to his side. Are you all right? Yes, he croaked back. I'm fine. His eyes trailed to where the hooded bandits had gone, a side entrance to the mountain's insides, probably a secondary mining tunnel. A few minutes passed in silence, before the 5 bandits came out, holding ensnared in a thick bundle of rope a miner who was pleading for his life. A kage bunshin each, kill them and substitute with each of them, but leave one alive, Nico whispered as an order. Baku narrowed his cold and indifferent blue eyes to his targets, and slowly brought his hands up to the seal. The next moment, the small group of clones executed a perfect dash from uphill downwards, each reaching their intended target before they could even think about screaming. The dark beige blurs that slammed 4 precisely identical Yoroi Toshi in their chests, piercing their hearts before synchronously twisting the blade out, and then slamming it back in on their necks had a sort of hypnotic cadence to their actions. Karasher was mesmerized as he found himself toppled to the ground and held firmly down by 4 identical blood-soaked blades while a 5th stood sharply clean plunged next to his head on the ground. The 5 masked men that looked back at him all wore the same mask, and all carried the same coldness. We are Baku, they muttered at the same time. Do not scream. He didn't, because he was outright frozen in fear. The miner that had been pleading for his life just a moment before was freed by a Nico-masked shinobi, and just as he did, the soot-covered man looked with awe at the Anbu. Thank Kami you arrived! The miner had tears in his eyes. We've been terrorized by these mobsters and the daimyo refused to act. You have our thanks, Shinobi-san. Yamato nodded stiffly. The Anbu Taishu brought his right hand on the miner's shoulder, and then spoke as if it actually pained his heart to say so. We're sorry, His voice actually sounded cracked. Was this all that being a true shinobi was about? F for what, Shinobi-san? Your village. We were pursuing a Wagakure shinobi across the border. My colleague and I are in patrol, he spoke gravely. Normally we wouldn't have entered the land of rivers, but the Awagakure shinobi had trespassed on the land of fire, and so we gave pursuit. They ran through your village, and it was not pretty what they did. His voice was actually filled with dread. How could he make such an honest expression? How could he lie with such ease? Was the mask used for that too? To hide the disbelief in the eyes of the colleagues? Those had been blatant lies. Complete and utter lies. The man couldn't believe that, could he? We have reason to believe they worked in a joint effort with the Kurasuki group, which is why we are currently taking custody of their members. My condolences for your losses. He stiffly bowed. The man had the guts to bow. How dared he bow? How dared he grieve when he had given the order? Baku snapped his eyes shut as he abruptly dragged back up the man, Karasher, he had heard the others call him. He held the Yoroi Tanto close to the man's neck, only for the hood to fall down and reveal a boy no older than him, maybe just slightly taller, but not by much. Were there survivors? The man asked, his voice thickly brimming with agony as his eyes watered. Baku would remember that scene until the end of his days. The sight of a burly, coal dust-covered man in his 40s crying his tears out of his eyes as his sensei shook his head grimly. He would remember it, and he would try his best not to. My wife, the miner croaked out between his sobs as he fell on the ground lifelessly, his frame shuddering as he kept on crying. Slowly, others from the mines who had remained to do overwork exited, and as Yamato turned to leave, Baku followed in silence. If it is of any consolation, Yamato added, we will avenge them, for we are Konoha shinobi. Baku schooled his shoulders as he followed the man away, pulling on the remaining member of the Kurasuki group. They left behind the miners' wails and their dash running towards the village, where they would find nothing but death and destruction. Where is Raiga's main camp? Yamato asked then, stopping halfway alongside a road, near a crevice that seemed to naturally end on sharp rock spikes. Please don't kill me, the boy was crying as he spoke. I had no choice. I know a Konoha shinobi too. He should be a genin, Rock Lee, he liked my mother's curry. Please, I had nothing to do with them, and I don't know any Awagakure shinobi. Really? Please, answer the question, Baku gruffly hissed. What were the chances they met someone who knew about another Konoha shinobi? What were they supposed to do then? Don't force me to resort to violence. Baku, Nico snapped. Silence. You're scaring the kid, Yamato continued smoothly. I do not know of a genin called Rock Lee, but if what you say is the truth and you were coerced, then we will certainly let you leave unscathed. He gestured towards him, and Naruto inwardly growled as he watched Baku let go of the boy. So, Nico continued. Where can I find Raiga's main camp, Karashi-kun? Yamato's voice was soft, but Nico's posture wasn't, and Baku's eyes told him all he needed to know. He's got a camp way up the mountain, the boy muttered pointing upwards. He has a trick to make an avalanche fall down, and he's got these swords that can spew lightning. There's always a light mist around him, and he always seems to know where we are. I tell you he's scary, but well, sometimes he speaks alone all by himself, Karasher stammered out. He's got this bulky thing on his back. He never goes anywhere without it. Thank you, Yamato nodded. Are there any traps to his camp? No, he doesn't have any. He said something about always seeing who was coming up and we didn't question him at all. Karasher swallowed. I can go now, right? Yamato nodded. Thanks. If you swing by my mother's shop, she makes a really good curry and… Baku had seen Yamato nod. The nod hadn't been directed towards the boy, but towards him. Karasher turned to leave only to see the tip of the Yoroi Toshi pierce through his left eyeball and slam directly into his brain, before pale blue flames erupted and burned his skull to crisp. Naruto barely widened his eyes in surprise at the flames. He had no idea how he had called them forth. With a strong kick to the guts, the corpse flew in the ravine below, as it burned, shattering against the rocks that were at the bottom. Was that not excessive, Baku? Yamato asked. Apparently not for Konoha, he remarked dryly. And I made it quick. Very well, Nico nodded. We begin ascension. With a quick movement of hand seals, a Mokutan Bunshin appeared from beside Yamato. We are going against an Anbu rank opponent from Kirigakure. They favor Suiton techniques and have a trademark mist that can hide them. They are all trained to listen to the smallest of noises, and the Kiba are a lightning-based pair of swords capable of calling down the lightning. Do you trust in my abilities? Baku asked curiously. You have proven yourself loyal to Konoha with the previous test, and that is why we have moved to the second part. Had you refused, we would have moved on from the village without repercussions. Baku's entire frame tensed. He killed the villagers. He could have avoided doing so. He had killed them. He killed them. He could have failed the test. But what of his teammates? What if failure meant their death? But the Godame had said it wasn't true, but he hadn't wanted to risk them. He had wanted to play it safe. He had been the ones to decide that Konoha was nothing more than a village filled with blackmailers. And the man here, he had barely tested his dedication to the village. He had probably been chosen to test to what lows he would subject himself for the village. He felt like he needed to retch in a corner. He had committed manslaughter out of fear they would target his teammates, but by doing so, he had proven himself instead loyal to the cause of the village. The man was genuinely testing him, not pulling strings to intimidate him into acting. A loud booming sound of thunder at the top of the mountain sprung him out of his thoughts as he moved his gaze upwards to the summit, where a thick mist was condensing and slowly rolling downwards. The Mokutan Bunshin charged ahead. Baku? Full engagement with your Kage Bunshin is authorized. Go all out. Understood. Naruto nodded. He would ponder more on his sins later. As it was, he had a duty to uphold to Konoha. His hands moved into a cross position as he narrowed his gaze behind his mask. Taju Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he whispered out as chakra expelled through his pores. Puff of smokes resonated in the clearing, as precise formations of the same shinobi appeared, all with the same mask, all with the same eyes, all with the same resolution. 1,000 Baku formed serrated ranks of 50 individuals, enough to warrant a full platoon of strength if composed of shinobi. The formations charged ahead in a deafening silence, interrupted only by the stampede of their feet on the ground. They disappeared into the mist formation after formation, as the crackling of thunder came down as lightning bolts in the midst of the fog, followed by rocks rolling down and crushing to their deaths the clones. The Mokutan Bunshin of his Taicho had entered the mist and disappeared unseen, just like the real Nico had done too. Naruto jumped to the side, avoiding a spinning ball of electricity that emerged from the thick mist as he too charged ahead. Random thoughts popped into his brain, of himself running up the mountain and then being smashed, sliced, torn apart, burnt, electrocuted, pierced, stabbed, and more. He gritted his teeth as he saw repeatedly the face of the man they were hunting in the mist. He had long dark hair and eyes, sporting a crooked smile as he was apparently enjoying the mindless slaughter. That lasted up to the point where he suddenly found himself dodging an attack, because the Anbu from Kiri, he was now in front of him. The Kibas came down crackling with electricity, forcing Naruto to bring up his Yoroi Toshi with wind chakra in it. He gritted his teeth as a strong sense of déjà vu filled his mind. The man would then swipe to the side with his other hand, and already he was dodging it rather than parrying the attack. If he dodged, he'd incur into a kick to the sides that would result in him losing balance, and being then pierced by both blades later. He widened his eyes for a brief second as one of his remaining clones substituted with him. The clone had probably been the closest in the area. The moment he did substitute and pop, Naruto realized he had seen the man prepare to lounge forward. Had he parried, he'd have ended up being stabbed. So this was the strength of Kage Bunshin: knowledge of the battlefield, testing of the enemy's techniques and styles without risk, ability to freely think without having to be guided by their creator. The Kage Bunshin wasn't just a kinjutsu, and he understood why it was a secretly guarded secret. A single shinobi could use it for exploration, create 2 or 3 at most, but a Jinchuriki could create platoons, he could create divisions. A horde of 1,000 shinobi, all trained, all prepared, all deadly, all increasing in skill and knowledge of the enemy as the time passed by. He was battling an Anbu rank missing nin, and he wasn't dead yet. That alone spoke volumes of the power of the technique. He exhaled as he watched another group of 50 clones battle him. They stabbed, lunged, swiped, kicked. Each of them was an entity by itself. They weren't all tired the same way, and that meant that while there was only one Raiga, there were at least still 500 Baku fighting him, and their knowledge, their strength, it was increasing. Soon, Raiga called down another wave of thunder as the enemy Anbu tore down mercilessly his clones in the vicinity, before charging down on him again. How did he know he was the original? What gave him away? Enough playing, the man spoke with a cruel voice. Then, rather than closing the distance once more to slash at him, he brought down both Kiba on the ground, shattering the ground, and exclaimed, "Reizo, Ikazuchi no Utage!" The reason he screamed that rather than simply letting the technique work, was that it wouldn't have changed the result. Electricity flew from the skies down on the swords, and then bolts departed faster than the eye could see to slam into his clones. That was the difference between Anbu and Chunin then. Because of the 500 clones remaining, only 24 stayed alive. Baku had barely the time to think that lightning bolts crashed against his body and fried him, skewing his nerves and sending him to twitch on the ground. The thunderstorm above them had begun to downpour, and as water descended clearing the mist, it became apparent that the 24 remaining clones would not last more than a few minutes. He wondered where he had gone wrong. He had superior numbers, hadn't he? Then again he was missing experience, and the battlefield, it never remained the same. He watched clone number 10 disappear in a pop, soon followed by number 11 and 12. It was then that clone number 15 rushed to his side with a kunai in hand. "Boss," he said, grabbing a hold of him and lifting him up. "Permission for summoning," he murmured to his ear. "Nico left us here. There's no other explanation." "And no," Baku stuttered out, trying to keep his body. "Wait, what had..." He poured his wind-natured chakra through his body, hissing and clenching his teeth as he felt the feeling of being shredded from the inside out abate slowly. He had done his best to keep it toned down, but he had no doubt he was going to suffer it once the adrenaline went down, just as Danzo-sensei had done to him once, when he ended up fried. That accident saved his life, because he fell down on the ground not a second after the Kiba's overhead swipe tore apart his previous bunshin, delivering onto him the knowledge of his death, and the fact that now, he was the only one remaining in the clearing. "You were a nice opponent," Raiga spoke then calmly. "I will enjoy burying your body. What is your name, shinobi? I must write it on your tombstone, you see." In that precise moment, Nico dashed out from underground and slashed in an uppercut arc Raiga's back, tearing apart his cloak as blood sprayed outside. The weight the man had been carrying on his back fell down with a sickening thud, as the body of a bleeding boy revealed itself as it laid on the ground. "Raiga-san," the boy croaked out as he moaned in pain. "It hurts." A vicious slash from Yamato soon followed, coming from a completely different direction. The Mokuton bunshin had hidden beneath the ground all this time, emerging only at the last split second. The real Nico had waited until that precise moment to emerge from somewhere even beyond the battle and attack, maybe the camp itself? The slash pierced through Raiga's side, forcing the Anbu to fall on the ground as the chakra blade gutted him with ease. Naruto coughed as he slowly held the area where the thunderbolts had struck him from the Kiba. "Why, you ran, Ranmaru," Raiga coughed out as he fell to the side of the boy, whose eyes were already glazed over and dead, as the rain kept on pouring down. What is your name, shinobi?" Raiga croaked out as his grip on the Kiba loosened. Who are you?" "We are Anbu of Konoha," Yamato replied. "We have no name." The man brought down his chakra blade on Raiga's neck, decapitating the missing nin with one swift blow. "Only our duty." Yamato pulled out a small scroll, one that Naruto had seen on the vests of the Jounin sensei before, those to carry corpses. "You have fought well, Baku," Yamato remarked simply. "It is thus my honor to induce you fully in the Anbu Corps." Naruto tensed, but did not move as the bloody tip of the chakra blade of Nico reached for his shoulder. The Anbu tattoo is carved with the blood of the enemy killed, tempered in the steel of the innocence lost and bathed with the tears of the heavens. Naruto said not a word as he felt the tip slice his shoulder, and then his skin. "It is a symbol of the will of fire, to burn brightly in the deepest shadows, hidden from the world. We are the shadows of Konoha, we are the darkness the fire hides, and we are the first and the last line of defense of the village. We act upon the orders of the Hokage, and to him we owe our undying loyalty. We, who are worthy. We, who are loyal. We, who are unyielding." Yamato then offered the chakra blade's hilt to Naruto, as if it was part of a ritual repeated since the dawn of time, as if he would know automatically what to do with it. "We, who are Anbu," Yamato added softly. "Our identity is cast aside, for we serve from the shadows for no fame or glory. Our names we will forget until the moment we leave our masks. I name you now fully as Baku. That is your name, and beneath it, may you bring glory to the Hokage's will." And Naruto, "No, Baku," he swore. "I will." The problem with entering the burrow of the White Rabbit wasn't how deep it was, but the fact that, in the end, there wasn't land, only a pool of bubbling acid for the foolish. They left the land of rivers the next day, letting a group of conveniently arriving genin with their Jounin sensei, among which he recognized Kiba, Hibachi and Shino, take care to bring first relief efforts to them as they were casually in the area. The land of rivers had just lost a gold mine and its workers, and since Sunagakure was nearby too, the land of wind would provide workers, while the land of fire would provide protection. Orochimaru's presence, not even present in the region, would be thwarted by that simple action. Simple, it was a way of putting it. Naruto ignored the nagging feeling at the back of his head, the pulsing sickness, and the rotting sensation that disgustingly rose from his throat every time he tried to say something, or to think about that moment. Yamato didn't give him much time to think. The border patrol of the Land of Rivers wasn't spent only keeping an eye out for enemy shinobi, but also helping the population of the land and showing a general good side of Konoha. There really was no reason to doubt Konoha's goodwill, when shinobi of the village hidden in the leaf provided help to the elderly and the young, who could call them murderers, when they helped old women cross the road. This just disgusted Naruto more, but thankfully, the month there passed fast, and with the border of Amigakure, there were no village to help. The forests and the plains filled with rivers left the place to dull and brownish marshes, where the rain thickly descended and forced him to wear a big and bulky cloak of dull beige. He still had made no progress with the Suiton technique, and he was actually starting to lose any hope of ever completing it. It was as he watched Yamato sparking a fire with a fire technique that he finally exhaled out his thoughts. "Nay, Nico?" he asked, his voice half monotone and half mechanical as he spoke. "Yes, Baku? Can't I learn a fire technique to complement my wind, rather than a water one?" There was a moment of silence, which the continuous deluge of water softened only barely. "You were told not to because it might have been dangerous for the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi to create a firestorm in the village, right?" Naruto muttered and shook his head. "Really, I try and bring up my hopes that the village might see me as a shinobi loyal to the cause and not as a weapon of mass destruction, and then they crashed down fast. I actually thought that was a good idea," Yamato muttered a moment later, "and no, I was not told I could not teach you fire techniques. I was told starting with the water one would better suit your need to master the Rasengan, due to their similarities." Naruto blinked behind his mask. "Really?" "Yes," Yamato nodded. There was another moment of silence. Then, Katon release? Imagine your chakra rippling upwards, like a crackling flame erupting from the pores of your hands. Generally fire is associated with the hand seal of the tiger. He demonstrated the seal. It will help build up the air around Naruto began to sizzle as waves of warmth spread around his body as soon as he completed the symbol and began to try to call forth the chakra. The heat spread like a sort of blanket, drying the ground and the upper side of the cave they were resting inside as vapors slowly climbed and left the rocky formation. Yamato remained silent for a moment more, before barking out quickly, "Baku! Stop!" Naruto stilled. The heat receded and slowly the cave ceiling began to drip down. "No wonder you couldn't do water release," Yamato muttered. "You're probably never going to, judging by how easily you picked up fire." The Anbu shook his head and sighed. "I should have known. So, does that mean I get fire techniques?" Naruto asked with a hint of excitement bubbling through his throat. "Fire would mean stronger techniques." "Yes," Yamato nodded. "You get fire techniques." He grabbed a shuriken and palmed it, letting his hand open to grant Naruto vision of what he intended to do. Slowly, a little red glow began to seep into the metal, before it suddenly disappeared. "This is my limit on fire release techniques," he said hesitantly. "I have sort of your same problem. I needed more than 10 years to overcome it enough to light a campfire. Sometimes you just get lucky enough to have an affinity and a second element you are good at. In exchange it becomes exponentially difficult to master a third one. Having air and fire, I suppose water is out of the equation for you. So, you don't know any fire techniques?" Naruto's shoulders dropped. "No, but it doesn't mean some principles aren't the same no matter the technique," Yamato retorted. "Like pouring elemental chakra into a blade, why don't you try it?" The Jinchuriki slowly took his Yoroi Tanto out of its holster, before letting his wind nature chakra flow through it. A light sheen of blue and pale gray covered the blade, as a slight breeze picked up ruffling the boy's hair. "Now try with fire," Yamato remarked. Naruto felt the chakra drain from his body as he imagined the chakra bubbling and rippling through his hand and on the metal. The next moment, he was holding on to a blazing burning sword that crackled with a pale blue flame that slowly turned reddish and then sizzled back down to simply hot metal. "Try and learn how to alternate between fire and wind nature chakra in the blade," Yamato said. "That's your new task. Once that is learned, we will move on to earth release techniques, which I suppose I can teach you of. Are all Jinchuriki filled with techniques?" Naruto's tongue felt slightly acidic. "That is the logical conclusion, is it not? Your chakra levels are such that you easily have thrice the same amount as any Kage, thus more techniques with a more widespread range of destruction. Coupled with your chakra control, which is excellent for someone with your reserves, by the way, you will most probably become a large asset to Konoha's military force in the future. Had they taught me this in the academy, I think I understand why they didn't, Naruto grimaced. You give a technique that burns to a kid, and he might burn your hair. If they gave me this and I made a mistake, you would have probably burned down a house at the very least, Yamato nodded sagely. It's good that you understand. Konoha isn't against you, Baku. The village was simply being careful. They could have told me, he bitterly muttered back. Would you have listened? No, he shook his head slowly as a bitter smile formed on his face. I probably would have screamed I wanted more techniques. Good, Yamato turned to the campfire. Keep up practicing, we still have a long way to go. Silence ensued in the camp, which was then broken off the next day as they began their trekking once more. They were still in Konoha territory, but it looked duller, rainier, sort of like the land of rains rather than the actual land of fire. It was just as he was about to ask what they were supposed to be eating for dinner, when Nico suddenly tensed and then spun around, launching a volley of shuriken behind him. Baku stood quickly, jumping to the side of the cave to get a better view of their assailant. It was then that he stilled. In front of him was a pale-skinned man. He had long, flowing red hair. He wore a cloak, a black with red clouds. His eyes were deep purple rings, concentric one with the other. The fact that stopped Naruto was that the shuriken launched. They hovered in midair in front of the man, who slowly picked them up one by one from the air itself. The rain, as insistently as it had come down, stopped, and with the sun slightly shining over the puddles of water that soaked the ground, the red-haired man spoke. My name is Nagato Uzumaki, Naruto. He brought his right hand forward. I have come to take you home. Without missing a beat, without wasting an instant, Baku struck forward. Chapter 45. The Confrontation of Past Sins. Baku's right fist didn't make it a single meter near the red-haired man. It stilled in midair, as if some sort of repulsive force was holding it firmly. The purple-ringed eyes stared back at him, looking directly within his own soul, as the tiny beginning of a smirk appeared on the man's face. Have you two become a weapon, Naruto? He asked carefully, the hint of sadness lurking in his tone. Have you lost your way? How? Naruto croaked out. How do you know me? I know everything, Nagato whispered back. Suddenly, he jerked his right hand to the side and as if swatting away a fly he slammed Yamato, who had been flanking him, on the ground from far away. For I am God. You're a shitty god then, Naruto growled. For everything you let happen. Nagato cocked his head to the side and nodded slowly. Yes, I am, he smiled. But through pain comes growth. Through pain comes truth. Through pain comes realization. Enlightenment can only come through clenching one's own teeth and fighting forward, never betraying one's own ideals. Naruto snorted as he jumped backwards and readied his Yoroi Toshi to fight. Ah, yes, Nagato nodded. That blade has felt the blood of the innocents on it. He kept his smile on. It was unnerving. How does it feel? Nagato smoothly asked. You don't have to do this any longer, Naruto, the red-haired man said, with a condescending tone. You can stop suffering now. You can stop fighting. I'll take care of you. Don't you want to be with your family? I don't know you. Naruto barked back. But I know you, Nagato smiled. Born on the 10th of October, from Uzumaki Kushina and Minato Namikaze, the Kyubi Jinchuriki and the Yandame Hokage, you graduated nearly dead last and became a member of Team 13. Your teammates are Haruno Sakura and Saisatu. You learned beneath Aoba Yamashiro and Danzo Shimura. He spoke softly. Your first affinity is to wind, but fire is something that comes naturally to you. Naruto paled. The last part meant he had been watching them since they had set up camp, and the first meant he either had spies in the village, or someone had told him all of that. Naruto, I have not come to fight, not today, Nagato shook his head. I have come to tell you the truth. As he spoke, tendrils of wood emerged from the ground to try to ensnare the cloaked man. The wooden tentacles turned to smithereens the moment they tried to touch the Uzumaki, as he narrowed his concentric eyes on Yamato. Your insistence sickens me. He brought his left hand up and then clenched it. Sleep. Yamato's body fell on the ground as if a heavy weight had settled on his shoulders, soon followed by the ground cracking beneath the pressure, as the man screamed from the pain. The truth, Nagato spoke next, looking at Naruto. The truth about Uzushio. He took a step forward. The reason the Uzumaki lost everything. The reason we were forced to escape, to leave behind our heritage, our past, our knowledge, hunted down like game, kidnapped, and brought away. Naruto swallowed as he carefully tightened his hold on his tanto. Why should I believe you? I could kill you where you stand, the man said. But I won't, for I speak the truth. A god needs not to lie, he remarked. Not when the truth is far worse, Naruto snorted. And what's your truth then? I hear a lot of them, he rolled his eyes. You've got the same cloak as Itachi and Tobi, same organization? The man tensed for a single instant, before the sun's rays shone against his forehead protector, that depicted an Amigakure symbol, glinting dangerously near Naruto's face. We belong to Akatsuki, the Red Dawn, he said then with a knowing look. You have already met two of my trustworthy priests then. You really believe yourself a god? Naruto sweated as he brought his right foot slightly backwards, to hold his weight better when he would charge again. Are shinobi not creatures able to bend the will of the elements to suit their needs? The man spoke again. When such power grows, when the elements become yin and yang, when the very life can be brought back to the dead, why should I not call me by my rightful name? I am Kami, and my name is Pain. He opened both of his arms wide towards Naruto. Embrace my words, Naruto. Embrace my truth. I can free you from your shackles. What are you talking about? Naruto whispered. Your teammates should not hinder your choices, Nagato said with a wistful tone. I can remove them, like I ordered your sensei removed. What? Orochimaru laid an ambush for your team, when you first left. He was the one who sent his men to ambush you, to claim what was hidden. He shook his head. He never could refrain from cracking the shells of secrets. But you, I am God. When he acted because I approved, Nagato remarked calmly. Has the pain of your sensei's loss opened your eyes to the shinobi world? Has the murder you have committed told you the truth? Can you now feel the pain, the agony and the undying screams of the wretched and sinful world of shadows? You're the reason Naoba-sensei is dead? Naruto's voice was soft and filled with disbelief as he spoke. Orochimaru gave an order I approved of, and just like that, with a mere nod, your sensei died, Nagato said firmly. Like the Hokage's approval destroyed a village of miners, or the words spoken in the darkness condemned our village to destruction. This is pain, this wretched, this horrendous feeling, this agony that feels worse than being stabbed, for it lingers in your soul for years. Can you feel it? You killed Aoba-sensei, Naruto growled as scalding rage poured through his body. You killed him. I gave an order, Nagato replied. How am I different from your leader? From your Hokage? With but an order, after all, Uzushiogakure was destroyed. A mere destroyed families, killed infants, slaughtered children. Did you think it matters to Kuri, to Kumo, to Konoha even? No matter where we went, we were hunted down, he softly added. Konoha shinobi killed my parents, civilians slaughtered for being in the wrong place at the wrong time. This world must feel the true meaning of pain, for without pain they will never cease their fights. Until everyone has lost a precious person, until everyone cries their tears of regret, until everyone feels too horrified of war to even consider it, until then, I will be the god of this world. He clapped both hands together as a giant puff of smoke called forth a strange-looking caterpillar, one with the same ring eyes as him. He deftly jumped atop it, letting his cloak billow in the wind, as above him the storm clouds kept on condensing and twirling. What says you, Naruto Uzumaki? What have you found to be your solace in the world of pain? I can offer you a family, Naruto. I can offer you a place to be yourself, and not a monster, a murderer, a sinner of the worst type. Accept my offer, Naruto. I will not lie to you, not like the others. We are kin, we are of the same blood and clan. I swear on my powers of a god, follow me, and I will bring all those you cherish back to life. Shut up, Naruto snarled. His eyes were deep pools of crimson and gold. Shut up, he hissed as blood dripped down from his palms, his frame slowly starting to crouch as his features became pharaoh-like. Deep black circles began to appear around his eyes, as pulsing blue veins stretched across his skin. A light twitching of red chakra erupted through his entire body, as the chakra cloak mixed with the sand that was rising from the wet ground. He could feel his nails elongate as his body trembled and shook beneath the sheer pressure of the hatred he felt. He could hear the chink sounds of chains clasping tightly, but by then, it didn't matter to him at all. The first instant, he was there on the ground narrowing his eyes against the cloaked man. The next, he was banging his right hand against a sort of invisible wall in front of the ring-eyed man. He actually created ripples of force as his fist impacted against a magnetic countercurrent designed to guard Nagato. Water began to pour down as Nagato swatted Naruto away. The blonde boy spun in midair, before pushing his feet against the sand platform that had vertically built itself in midair for him to use as a trampoline. He pounced back at the man in an instant, his mouth opening to regurgitate a sickening twisting Baijidama formed of dark crimson chakra. Nagato's summon jumped up taking the full brunt of the attack that ended upwards and detonated, tearing apart the heavens themselves. The downpour stilled as Naruto's hand extended a sand rendition of a claw from his side to slash at Nagato's jumping back body. He tore his cloak, growling furiously and roaring as a second tail began to spread from the back of his body, swishing madly. "So you have chosen your side, Naruto Uzumaki," Nagato remarked calmly. "So be it. I will show you true misery and pain." Misery. Despair. "Yahiko, you can't die." "No. Conan wouldn't." "Hatred. Malice." "Hanzo, I will have my revenge." "Danzo, I will come for your life." "You backstabber. You betrayer, I am Baku." Naruto roared as a tornado of air, flames and sand burst forth from his mouth like a raging grinder. The wind scattered the sharp glass formed from the high flames of air and fire with the sand, which tore through and grinded to a pulp what apparently was Nagato's body. The body fell down on the ground with a sickening thud. When it did, and when Naruto landed in front of it with a vicious and cruel smile on his face, the smile soon morphed to a twisted look of anger. The next roar tore apart much of the landscape surrounding him, as waves of air and tornadoes naturally formed on the ground and burned like a scene from hell itself. The waves of heat, the glass fragments floating in the air and the strong lashing winds, made the spectacle even more frightening. Thunder struck down from the sky as Naruto snarled and bit down on the corpse that wasn't Nagato, but some sort of rendition that used a real living body as a sacrifice. He pounced on the corpse all the same, snapping the bones as his roars slowly died down, replaced by the screams, the shrieks, and finally the half-choked sobs. Yamato poked his head out from his wooden dome, which he had used the split second he had been able to move away from the carnage. The battle hadn't lasted much, a mere minute or two, but already around him he could see the devastation that it brought. He shuddered. This was the power of a Jinchuriki and an S-rank shinobi battling. The ground that had been mushy was now charred, the rain that had been falling was now replaced by fragments of glass that floated in the winds, and were all sharp and as warm as if they had been taken out of the forge. In the depth of a depression in the ground, he carefully eyed Naruto's trembling form as his hands covered in blood ripped apart the body. "Bibaku!" he snarled. The masked shinobi stood awkwardly up, his hands dripping the blood on the ground as he trudged back up from the crevice. He slowly stood next to Yamato, his height lower than his of a good head, and yet to Yamato, it felt like watching a fellow operative, and not just a chunin with a cloak and an Anbu mask on. "Yes, Taicho, are you under control?" he asked. He hadn't needed to use his mokuton to restrain him, and whatever had happened, whatever techniques he had used to create this veritable glass hell on earth, was now slowly dwindling down and coming to a halt. Naruto took another step forward, as his feet scrunched on the glass fragments on the ground. "Yes, Taicho, good," Yamato exhaled slowly. "We can proceed. Should we not report back to Konoha?" Nico nodded, unhooking one of the scrolls from his vest and opening it to push out in a plume of smoke a small avian, a messenger hawk. The animal had a Konoha forehead protector on its neck, but the moment his eyes met Naruto's, the bird squawked with a smug grin and flapped on the boy's shoulder. Naruto's bloody hands came up to caress the chin of the animal, whose beak delicately bit down on the morsel of flesh that had remained beneath the boy's nails. "Interesting," Yamato acquiesced as he scribbled down a string of numbers, Anbu code, probably, on a scroll which he then clasped to the hawk's leg. "Deliver this quickly." The hawk shrieked at him, and ruffled her feathers. She didn't move. Baku waited for a heartbeat, before whispering, "Go." Then the hawk took off. "We should reach the old border in less than 2 weeks if we hurry," Nico commented after a few seconds of tense silence. "Let us not waste more time here." "Understood." With that single word they were off. The change wasn't instantaneous as one would think. The marshes and the bleak-colored grounds left the place first to dull green plains that slowly, day after day, turned brighter. Small trees grew larger with the passing of the miles, and as their surrounding turned from green luscious plains to thick forests and giant tree trunks, Naruto felt more at ease. This looked more like Konoha's territory than Amigakure, but it was undoubtedly Kusagakure, the land of grass. "Very well," Yamato remarked after a few hours of walking among the tall branches of the trees. "We have nearly arrived." Baku nodded as he looked around. There was nothing but branches, leaves, and little more of interest. Maybe a few birds or bugs flying around, but nothing really. He slowly brought his hand to his yoritoshi, because he felt it then, a light sensation, a sort of tug and a pull that seemed to be calling for him. He didn't move as his eyes zeroed on a blur of green that seemed to be flying towards them with incredible speed. He clasped the handle of his tanto just as the blur stopped abruptly, the wind displacement scattering a few of the leaves. A tan girl, with an orange clip in her short, spiky green hair and a cocky smirk, stood flying with 4 wings made of green chakra on her back. She was holding on to a cylindrical red object strapped to her back, from within which Baku could hear the low rumbling noises of insects buzzing alarmingly. They were scared. "State your identification," the girl sing-sung, taking care to say each syllable of the word separately. "Or I'll eat you," she smiled. "I'm hungry too. We're the shinobi from Konoha that will assist in patrolling the borders," Yamato remarked. "We are expected." "Oh yes." She clapped her hands together. "Soyen said he was expecting you. And there's one like me with you too, yes?" She lowered herself until her face was merely inches away from the Baku mask. Her eyes were pupilless and golden, and she sported a toothy grin as she added, "Nice to meet you, I'm Fu." She then tried to hug him. "Let's be friends." He ducked beneath the hug, sending the girl to stumble in the air with her chakra wings. "Hey! That's not nice," she huffed as she jumped down and landed. "Not nice at all," Baku shrugged. "I am Baku," he remarked. "That's not your name, silly," Fu said with a giggle. "You're the boy who ate that girl." "Yes? You like to eat too, right? You like fresh food, eh?" She winked at him. She had probably 16 years, albeit her way of speaking resembled more that of a small boy. "I am Baku," he insisted calmly. "If you could refrain from infringing my teammate's Anbu cover," Yamato spoke then, "it would be better." Fu sucked in air sharply, before making a zip movement with her hand and nodding vividly. "Fu's good at keeping secrets. She eats them too. Nay, do you have something yummy?" She brought out her wings again and fluttered closer to Naruto, her right hand gently caressing his arm. "I'm starved." Her eyes shone lightly as her voice lowered itself of a timbre. She licked her lips sensually, before making a tiny coy smile and moving her face closer to Baku's side, to whisper in his ear, "We can eat each other out, if you want to." Then she smiled brightly and stuck her tongue out. "Kidding. Soyen said I can't eat allied shinobi." She shrugged and began to fly. "Follow me. I'll take you to camp where there's Ryuryu waiting for us." She winked. "She's really shy," she giggled. Then she began to fly away from them without missing a heartbeat. She was actually singing as Baku and Nico followed her through the trees, jumping and speeding up to catch her. It was with a mixture of annoyance that Baku realized that he knew precisely well what flying truly was about, and the reason why the girl was probably flying too. Flying was freedom, freedom from the chains that bound one to the earth and its laws, free from obligations, orders or just about anything. To fly was to escape and be free. He couldn't help bringing his thumb near his chin, to push it beneath his mask and bite on it, but he held. What would he do? Summon a condor only for the need to fly as fast as the woman that felt so familiar to him? No, there was no way he'd do something like that. Chomei, the Nanabai, the sins of ignorance, which were those born of apathy, of uncaring, of simply being with no thought beyond the now. Those who lived in the ever-fleeting present with no care for others, the cicada who sung day after day without a care and that lived only as long as luck would have it. Ignoring the truth of the world did not hide it from reality, but ignorance was bliss. Those thoughts twisted into Naruto's mind as he heard the rattling of the chains that held down the Kyuubi and the Ichibi, whispering to him of knowledge that he wasn't supposed to know. Behind the mask, the Chunin Anbu narrowed his eyes. The way they spoke of devouring, of making whole, it was sort of different, and yet at the same time, it felt right. He didn't know what to make of it, but he knew as he finally landed on the soft ground with Yamato in tow. Why the older Anbu had chosen him to go forth first was a mystery. That he was going to move forth with feet of lead. The camp apparently had little more than a tent and a half-concealed fire. There was a woman there that Naruto seemed to recognize. It took him an instant. "You," he said, "you're from the Konoha exams?" Ryuzetsu's eyes widened briefly, before the Anbu schooled her features and nodded. "My name is Ryuzetsu. Are you the Konoha shinobi assigned?" Yamato nodded. "We are." "I am Nico." "I am Baku," Naruto stiffly said. He sniffed the air for a moment, his face turning around. "I smell blood." "I found something to eat," Fu commented happily. "So I ate him." The fact she said him rather than it spoke volumes. "Will she be a problem?" Naruto queried. "I'm not a problem," Fu hotly exclaimed back, huffing and pouting. "I'm the Jinchuriki of the Nanabai. I'm the Seven Tails. I'm stronger than you." "Yes, I doubt it," Baku remarked, taking a step forward, which soon met another from the tanned girl. There was a moment of silence. "Then you're stupid, because no one's stronger than me." Fu puffed her chest out and took another step. "Baku," Yamato warned him, but Baku didn't hear. Do you want to spar once our patrol is over? Naruto mocked her. Maybe by then you'll understand who's stronger. You're on, she snapped. And I'm not going to eat you, you'd taste yucky anyway. She spun and walked away to a corner of the camp, where she sat down to sulk. Was that necessary? Ryuzetsu asked, raising an eyebrow. She won't eat me, Baku deadpanned. I take that makes it necessary. I think she was joking, Baku, Yamato tried hesitantly. No, Ryuzetsu shook her head. She's got her own concept of eating, I think, the woman murmured. Well, I'm Ryuzetsu, but you already know that, right? I'm a Kusugakure Kunoichi-an. You were supposed to be from Taki. Naruto mulled over. I think I remember you from the forest. Possible. I lost my team there, she murmured. I was going as a Taki Kunoichi because their team was incomplete. Only that, she added hesitantly. Yes, Baku turned to look around once more. You were promoted to Chunin too. Indeed, she stiffly answered. I was. You do not wear a mask, Yamato remarked. I was told operatives for this mission would be of Anbu rank. We of Kusugakure don't believe in wearing masks for hits. It makes it easier for others to trust us when they know our assassins by face. If we haven't sent one, they'll know. That just means you can mask one of your shinobi as one of other countries and set them up, Baku quipped with a shrug. Which is smart, not overly so but still. That is slander, Ryuzetsu remarked as she shook her head. I am a fire release user. Fu has some abilities with her bugs, but I don't think she actually has any techniques. She wasn't trusted enough? Naruto was actually holding back a worried tone in his voice. I think you'd better ask her. The diplomatic answer left Baku to cock his head to the side for a moment, before he nodded. We should get to know one another better, Yamato proposed, only for Baku to stare at him. Maybe not. He quickly moved to the side of the camp, letting his back against the tree as he took in the situation at hand. Naruto hadn't said much of a word since their departure from Amigakure. Well, not that there was much to say to begin with, what with his life having to be kept secretive and him not actually being a socialite. Yet the first thing the boy had done upon his arrival had been to antagonize the other Jinchuriki, as if there was something that kept unnerving him. Was it the eating part? He shuddered slightly. The way the boy had acted with that fake corpse, which he had sealed anyway to be sure, just made it even more maddening to think about. Why eat the corpses? He couldn't understand. He couldn't find any valid reasoning behind that logic, and that left him stumped. He was moving blindly, and was he supposed to control Naruto? The villager's best solution would be to slice his neck during the night, hoping he'd die without causing a fuss. That was as far as his mean of control extended. Nanabai says you're stupid, the voice of the Seven Tails interrupted his thoughts, as he watched the Jinchuriki of Takigakure stroll over him with a crown of grass blades in her hand. It took skill to knot together such a quantity of blades in a few minutes. Because you don't know, you're thinking evil. He raised an eyebrow from behind his mask. Could the Jinchuriki possibly? Things flow, she said then. Like fish, you know? They swim in the river, she said with a bright smile. The river goes from the mountain all the way to the sea, and then back to the mountain. When it rains, she nodded. And that's good, right? Because plants grow and fish swim. But water is sometimes strong, and so people dam it, which is nice, because you get more plants and fishes near, but those further down don't. And in the end the fish are all caught, and the ocean starts to drain, and if the water doesn't get to the ocean then everyone is sad, and you know, they die of hunger. He was starting to think there was a connection now. The only problem was finding out what the girl meant with half of her words. Chakra is water, she said. Yin and yang. Positive and negative, it's a tool, but balance must always be there. She nodded firmly. Nanabai says that when the balance goes awry, then things are born to put it back in place. When things are born to put it back in place, they take different forms. Fires, earthquakes, forces of nature, she had a wistful smile. Or the power to kill the guy who tries to rape you in the night, she giggled. Evil is everywhere. Good too, but if evil can't be filtered then it can't become good. So the Nanabai asks me to free her, and I say no, because she's nice to have, she's a friend, and I ate her because she's nice and will always stay with me. She smiled, just as Nico decided he had heard enough. The girl was probably mad. I see, he said carefully. You don't believe me, but the Nanabai says it's fine, because you're stupid and ignorant. Fu nodded firmly. But with suffering comes truth. Yamato's eyes narrowed. Who did you hear this from? Someone who wanted me to enter his family, she chirped. I said no. My family is Nanabai, because she's always there for me. She smiled as she tapped her stomach. She makes sure we can only have each other, she eats everyone else. She frowned a moment later. He left before I could eat him, but he said he'd be back. She nodded strongly. I see, Yamato dryly commented, before looking to where Naruto was currently standing, opposite of him and imitating his moves. He wondered if the boy had actually taken a liking to the Anbu way of thinking. He knew only a few who usually went completely through their first Anbu mission initiation without saying no. Tora looked aghast as she watched her team nod to the mission the Taicho had given. Her sensei was perfectly at ease with following through with the orders, and the psycho monster woman had no trouble. Their Taicho, the silver-haired guy who had a wolf mask, seemed to be taking a stroll in the market, as if he hadn't just told them to line with explosives a cruiser filled with civilians in the land of waves. Sure, it was a cruiser filled with civilians and apparently contraband cargo being hauled all the way from Kumo to Kiri through the Gato's ship lines, but still, they would need 2 hours of running in the water to reach the cruiser's theorized location as it neared the bridge between the land of waves and Kirigakure's main island. The Gato Corporation bridge was a spectacle to behold, albeit one that she really didn't find all that impressive. She had no trouble believing the mission would be easy. It was the leave no survivors that had her worried. The cruiser had only burly anglers on board, nothing too traumatic, but that was a civilian cruiser. There were no shinobi. It would be a slaughter. She had no trouble turning her hands crimson with the blood of monsters, beasts, and people who fought against her. Here, however, she was one of the bad guys. Sure, they had trained her in Konoha to always believe that the missions were for the good of the village, but this? This wasn't. She was running behind her sensei without even realizing it, her nervousness swallowed down as she carefully entered from one of the lower round windows of the boat. She was small enough to fit through. She wore one of those long all-concealing coats that the Anbu wore while in Konoha to hide their forms, and her mask hid her face and her green eyes perfectly. Strapped at her waist was a chakra blade, a gift for finishing the trainee period and entering the live-action training time. The others, they would climb from above while she looked around the cargo hold for proof. She was the one in charge of giving the order to the others to intervene or not. It was as she carefully left the small storeroom and moved her gaze around the corner that she came to a screeching halt. There were cages and shinobi, the latter wearing Kumo headbands and looking around with a bored or lecherous face. The reason for the face the shinobi had was clear by the content of the cages. Humans. There were a few scrawny-looking men and a minority of women in the cages. The leers were directed at the latter, but even as Sakura's soul curled up in shock, she realized that the contraband in question, it was slaves. This was a slave trade. Kumogakure was exchanging civilians with Kiri. She could even think that the bloodline purges had something to do with it to boot, but then why? Hadn't the rebels won? Then again, rebels weren't necessarily good persons too. Good people didn't rebel to their ruler, as the purple whore had made clear to her in the forest. She slowly stepped back in the storeroom and pressed against the small radio in her ear. When she didn't hear static, meaning she had a free line of communication, she whispered, "Contraband confirmed. Slaves. Affirmative. Begin distraction." The reply was succinct and to the point, and Sakura nodded as she slowly placed an explosive tag to the side of the storeroom, soon followed by a second and a third. She placed a piece of trip wire beneath the 3 tags, and slowly unbundled it until she was next to the door in question, with a kunai in her other free hand. She counted slowly to 3. She sent a pulse of chakra to the tags, which lit up just as she dashed out of the room, throwing a kunai at the first Kumo shinobi who looked at her in shock as it pierced his neck and sprayed blood on the ground. The tags exploded and sent the entire cargo haul careening against the right side, except for her, because her feet had remained attached with chakra to the floor. She charged through and managed to hit with another kunai in the arm of Kumo Kunoichi, while using the assigned chakra blade to slice the chest of a shinobi nearby. The 2 wounded shinobi screamed a string of curses as they regrouped behind the unscathed ones, who had in the meantime regained their bearings. They began the hand seals for an electric technique, only for one of them, their leader and probably a jounin, brusquely interrupting them. "Stop it, you idiots! Do you want to fry the merchandise?" The women were screaming in the cages, as Tora gave a quick look around. She could throw an explosive tag at a cage on the other side of the hall. The floor was now inclined. It would fall directly on the enemy ninja and give her time to attack or leave, but that would mean injuring or potentially killing a few slaves. She couldn't do that. Naruto wouldn't. "Who are you, little ninja?" the man said then, looking at her. "You don't look from around here." She didn't reply as she slowly moved her head to the side in a silent rendition of "really?" Unnerving the opponent always worked to make them brag, most of the time. She felt the air current move and she ducked down just as blades of wind tore through the upper side of her cowl, sending bits and pieces of the leather to fly together with a few strands of pink hair. "Pink hair?" Really? The Jounin laughed. Oh right, I forgot, he grinned. Water and wind only guys the Jounin. He could really be nothing else, if he had two affinities. Let's drown this little rat. I'm a tiger, she replied frostily. I eat rats. The first hand sign was easy. By the second, she was attacked by the two Chunin rank who flanked her together with the Jounin. Their attacks passed through her bunched body with ease as she stabbed her chakra blade straight in the spine of the Jounin. Or at least tried, as the Jounin itself turned into a lightning form that detonated. She ended backwards from the strength of the explosion, as lightning arched and ended up against the rusty iron cages, keeping the slaves inside safe all the same. The two Chunin were safely smirking from their spot, as lightning simply passed through them without harming their bodies. Sakura snarled as she felt her entire body twitch and spasm. Stupid ninja! Lightning can't affect people in iron cages. The Jounin emerged from the shadows. Now let's see who this pretty Anbu is. He licked his lips as his right hand went to unclasp her mask. She snarled through it, and the moment his hand moved her mask beyond her mouth, she bit down on it hard. The Jounin snarled as a sudden electric shock passed straight through Sakura's mouth, making her froth, as she couldn't feel her tongue anymore. That's what bitches get for being hard, the Jounin snarled as he completely tore off the girl's mask. He chuckled. You're just a kid. Bored, he stood up. I'll let you choke on your own tongue then. Damn, here I was hoping for a woman. Just as he turned around, a string wire rewarded him by slicing his neck off in a single instant as the hazel eye and Sharingan eye of the purple-haired forest horse stood open in glee. She cackled as she placed the bandana back on her Sharingan eye, before resettling her Anbu mask. She had apparently killed the other Chunin while they had all been distracted, as their bodies floated in the ankle-deep water that slowly was entering from the breach in the hull. The woman then laughed as she got down on one knee near Sakura, holding her mouth open and pushing her tongue out to let her breathe. Never bite a lightning release user, brat, she remarked. Especially not on their hands, really. What was the brain telling you? She snorted as she deftly grabbed Tora's mask. You should have herded them back in the storeroom with the water, or broken the walls in here too. Even lightning users don't use lightning lightly when wet, because they aren't stupid. She shook her head. Lightning lightly, good one. She chuckled. Well, kid, I suppose you did well. She hoisted the girl on her shoulder, making Sakura mentally wince as she felt her teeth bit down on her tongue in pain. Yes, we're leaving, Anko said, rolling her eye. We cleaned up above really well. Found a lot of stuff too. Sakura's eyes moved to the slaves, who all held a hopeful gaze on them. Oh, right. Anko reached the end of the cargo hall, and the stairs to the above floor. Within a second, a volley of kunais with explosive tags slammed all around the hall. No offense, folks, but we can't leave any survivors who saw an Anbu's operative mask. It's the protocol. See ya, suckers. Then Anko pulled Sakura with her away as the tags sizzled and detonated, as the slaves screamed as the lucky ones died first. The unlucky ones would drown. Sakura's eyes were wide in shock as she watched Anko place her Tora mask back on her face. Now, you shouldn't look at me like that, brat, she chuckled as she placed her on her shoulders like a captured deer. It's in the protocol. You were stupid enough to have your mask taken? Your fault. And frankly, I hate having to herd slaves around. They always whine about their mothers or fathers or wives and it's boring, and you take weeks to go somewhere when all you need is a shinobi alone is days. She reached for the bridge, where both Yugao-sensei, wearing a cat mask, and Kakashi, wearing the wolf one, were moving through the notes. There were the bodies of the captain and his crew on the ground, all dead. The wolf mask Kakashi gave but a glance towards her still twitching form, and then resumed shuffling through the papers. He absent-mindedly grabbed a few and pouched them, before giving a nod to Yugao, who simply grabbed the helm and spun the ship. Will it be enough? She asked the wolf mask. Line the ship with explosives. Better safe than sorry, he remarked. 2 hours later, the cruiser ship Algatha crashed into the central pillar of the Gato Corporation bridge. The explosion trembled pots through all of the land of waves. As of the bridge itself remained nothing more than ruined pillars in the water. Sakura watched, her body still slightly twitching, from the shore the bridge crumbling down together with the merchants and the people who worked as guards on it, but she just couldn't muster any emotion. She had done her job, hadn't she? Her hands were filthy with blood, however. She wondered how Naruto was faring. Was his patrol any better than her Anbu training? In that silence, she missed Sai's casual quips and words. They always seemed to make things better. The patrol of Kyuzugakure's border and prison, or ruins of said prison, went by without a single hitch. Even the slight detour to visit the capital of Grass and its leaders showed nothing strange or bizarre. It was actually unnerving Baku. Nothing was going on. Nico hadn't given him any orders, and the patrol was actually coming to an end. Their last months would be in Takigakure's border, and then their capital. Fu had actually stopped talking completely, preferring to just hum along as she flew in front of them. Then again, they were a patrol with 2 Jinchuriki and 2 Umbu-rank shinobi. What could actually stop them? The answer came on a rainy day of May, as the thick humidity of Takigakure stuck Naruto's clothes to his skin even before one of the casual and usual downpours began. To think that being north of Konoha, the weather was supposed to be milder. The scathing warmth of the land was always replaced with freezing downpours of icy cold water, which made his teeth chatter. He'd have caught a sickness by now, if it weren't for the fact that he was practically immune to being sick. Naruto was standing guard over the camp, with Fu humming and flying up in the air while buzzing to the nearby insects. Sometimes, swarms of beetles would start to follow her in the air for a while, but they always disappeared when she got hungry. Fu slowly hummed to herself before floating down and letting her legs dangle from the same branch that Baku was currently standing on. "We're going to spar soon," she said then, for the first time in months since they had begun their patrol. There had been no attempt at conversation before with him, not that he had researched them, and she had always generally kept to herself or to talking with Ryuzetsu. "So I wondered," she hummed. "Are you scared I'll eat you?" "No," he shook his head. "Can't we fight now, then?" Fu asked. "I want to eat something crunchy," she remarked. "And you look crunchy. You said you wouldn't eat me," he replied. "Ah, right," her head dropped. "I said that," she sighed. "Well, do you want to eat me?" "No," he dryly said. "Why not?" "Am I not good enough?" she asked, pointing at herself. "Oh, you like playing with your food too?" "I like playing. I don't play with my food," he exhaled slowly, as his eyes settled up to the sky covered by the thick branches filled with leaves. The air around them was fresh, considering it was raining all around them. The Seven-Tails' clothes were wet, and clung to her skin, as she seemed to glisten slightly from her spot. "Do you?" Fu asked slowly. "Do you have someone to eat with?" He raised an eyebrow at that, before slowly giving a curt nod. "I do." "Oh," her shoulders dropped. "Can I come too? Haven't we been eating up until now together?" He looked back at the camp. Wasn't that what the girl meant? "No, that's just ingesting food," Fu exclaimed affronted. "Eating is, you eat with your family, yes? And you eat with your friends. And when you eat good things, that you keep inside of you because they're warm and nice. Ingested food can be puked, yes? Eaten food isn't." What exactly do you mean with eating me?" he asked carefully. "We're the same," she said slowly. "I want to keep you," she added then. "So I want to eat you," she nodded to herself. "Like some insects eat their mates, because they want to always have them near, right?" "I don't think it works that way," Baku remarked, crossing his arms over his chest. "And when did you decide on this?" "I saw you fight," she whispered. "That girl, in the arena, I saw you fighting. I heard her scream. I know you didn't want to do it, but you ate her all the same," she murmured. "But Suyan said I couldn't eat allied shinobi," she murmured. "So, can we eat together then?" There was silence, a silence that stretched for a few minutes as the girl seemed to fidget, standing there and twisting a lock of her green hair with her fingers that had fallen over her face. Her golden eyes looked down, as if waiting an answer from him. Baku looked around for a moment, and then, just as he was about to reply, a scream tore through the air as a three-sided blade swung spinning through the downpour, slicing straight through Fu's side and leaving behind a trail of blood as it disappeared back where it came from. "For Janshin-sama!" The scream brought Baku to full attention as he looked around in search of the shinobi who had done that, but in the middle of the thick downpour he couldn't see further than where the water was halted by the branches. Both Yamato and Ryuzetsu had heard the yell, but the 2 Umbu-rank shinobi froze as they watched a figure step out from the side of their camp. The Takigakure forehead protector slashed, as the pupilless green eyes of one of the most wanted S-rank shinobi of Taki stood there watching them with a half-bored look. "Kakuzu of Taki," Yamato whispered. "Anbu from Konoha," Kakuzu remarked dryly. "I'd recognize those masks anywhere. Do you have a bounty? Remove your mask. I might not even bother fighting you two if there isn't one high enough." It was just as Yamato was about to reply that he suddenly switched with a Mokuton Bunshin, to avoid the stab that directly pierced his heart coming from behind, from Ryuzetsu. "Kakuzu-san," Ryuzetsu said crisply as his body fell on the ground. "The Jinchuriki are." "Stupid girl," Kakuzu growled. "He's a Bunshin," the S-rank shinobi snarled as he pointed towards his wood Bunshin. "But this," the S-rank shinobi chuckled, "sure brings back memories." He fondly said the last sentence as Yamato merged with the tree roots nearby. "Remain on your guard." he snapped at Ryuzetsu. Nico mulled it over. So Ryuzetsu was a spy for Akatsuki. The problem now was another. How was he going to get Baku out of there? An S-rank shinobi of 40 years, of 60 like Orochimaru, was a formidable foe with a run-on-sight order. Kakuzu of Taki was a 91 years old S-rank shinobi who had battled against the first Hokage himself, and was an elite assassin who had slaughtered his own village's Kage and council in order to acquire Taki's forbidden techniques. A trained Jinchuriki could probably take him on, but he wasn't one, and Naruto wasn't trained enough. The best solution was to retreat. That was when the ground beneath him exploded, forcing him to jump in midair and use the trees to reach for the air. Behind him, Kakuzu laughed dryly as he simply swatted away the giant tree, which he had uprooted. "No use hiding, Konohanin," he remarked. "Let us talk nice and slow." He flickered away to reappear with his right fist covered in stone straight in front of Yamato, who parried it with his chakra blade. The chakra blade snapped cleanly in half. "I just want to talk, shinobi," Kakuzu snarled. "Tell me," he began slowly, "are you as strong as Hashirama, Little Leaf?" To that question, Yamato narrowed his eyes as he took out a second chakra blade. He never went anywhere without at least two, for safety reasons. In the silence interrupted only by the downpour of water, at the border of Takigakure's territory that confined with the Wagakure, that was how they stood, and time seemed to slow as the battle was about to begin.